Your pulse surges the moment your phone vibrates. Before you even glance at the screen, a primitive alarm fires deep in your brain as though a predator has crept into your cave. Your stomach knots and your fingertips itch to unlock the device. It's not curiosity, it's fear. A fear millions of years in the making, wired into your nervous system long before social media even existed. That ping isn't just a signal, it's a cry for survival, yanked straight from the same circuitry that kept your ancestors alive when real threats hunted them. In prehistoric times, belonging meant protection. A lone hunter risked starvation or becoming prey. Ostracism wasn't just painful, it was fatal. Our brains evolved to monitor social standing, like they tracked an approaching lion. Every grunt, glance, or whisper carried weight. Back then, isolating from the tribe meant dying alone in the dark. Those survival circuits were etched into our amygdala and hippocampus. Without realizing it, those same circuits still patrol your mind, sounding alarms whenever you sense even the tiniest social shift, like a missed notification or an unread message. When you see that little red badge, your brain interprets it as a breach in the tribe's boundary, a signal that you have been forgotten or replaced. Today, the threat signaled by your screen is trivial: a friend's photo, a comment, an advertisement. And yet, your brain still treats it as if your life hangs in the balance. That red dot becomes a scarlet letter, screaming, "You're being excluded." A skipped ping is a kiss of death in your neural world. Your mind races to fix it, swipe, tap, reload, hoping to silence the alarm. You don't pause to question why you're risking concentration, productivity, or peace of mind for such fleeting digital chatter. When that tiny blink lights up your perception, your amygdala leaps into action. Your fight or flight response floods your bloodstream with adrenaline and cortisol. You feel jittery, restless, on edge. Your heart pounds, your breath shortens, and a warm wave of unease sweeps through your chest. It's the same response you'd have to a growl in the bushes. Only now the danger is social pain instead of physical harm. Then you chastise yourself for being distracted, never linking the rush you feel to something as banal as a notification. But it's not all fear. Dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, sneaks into the cycle as well. Each notification, promise, likes, comments, mentions carries a tiny rush, a digital carrot dangled before you. You tap and your brain rewards you, reinforcing the behavior. It's a looping feedback system, a self-perpetuating trap. The next ping feels like hope shining through darkness, a flicker of validation that whatever you're doing, you still matter. Even the smallest interaction becomes a high-stakes transaction between your self-worth and the capricious attention of strangers. Soon enough, you're checking reflexively, even when you don't hear or see a ping. Your thumb hovers, ready to swipe, itching to know what happened. That phantom vibration sensation becomes impossible to ignore. You're wired to expect an alert, and when none arrives, your brain chastises you for missing it. This anticipatory anxiety kicks in at random moments, waiting at the light, in the middle of a conversation, even as you drift to sleep. You've transformed your life into a minefield of alerts, each step anxious, each moment incomplete, without constant digital input. This perpetual state of readiness erodes your emotional resilience. You become hypersensitive to rejection. A slow reply triggers dread. A comment you don't understand breeds self-doubt. Every social media update warps into a personal referendum on your value. And because these circuits operate below conscious awareness, you don't see how hardwired you've become. You blame yourself, not the wiring in your skull. You chastise your lack of focus, your impatience, your restlessness, never realizing it's your own brain misfiring, sending you into battle over a ping. Meanwhile, the world around you pays the price. Your relationships suffer because you're never fully present. You nod absent-mindedly at friends or family, your eyes flicking up at the thought of checking your feed. Ideas go half-baked, tasks drag on, creativity stalls. You wonder why you feel constantly fatigued and distracted. It's not laziness, it's the cognitive toll of fighting your own neural instincts. And the more you struggle, the louder the pings become, dragging you deeper into a cycle of alert, check, reward, and anxiety. Breaking free starts with awareness. Recognize that each ping is a hijack attempt by your own brain. That vibration feels urgent because it is urgent to keep you hooked. But you can rewire the response. Silence notifications, batch your checking. Introduce friction. Every time you resist the ping, you weaken the neural pathway. Over time, the alarm loses its power, the rush fades, and the anxiety dissolves. Your brain can learn new priorities, valuing deep work, genuine connection, and mental calm over the siren call of digital alerts. Remember, you're not weak, you're wired for a different world. Your brain doesn't know that missing a social media update won't leave you foraging alone or exposed to danger. It only knows that buzzing signal once saved lives. The challenge isn't overcoming a lack of willpower, it's rewiring millennia-old survival circuits for a reality that no longer demands constant vigilance. And in that rewiring lies your freedom, a life unchained from the tyranny of notifications, where presence, creativity, and peace reclaim their rightful place. And just wait until you discover how that same ancient alarm system tricks you into devouring sugar as though your life depends on it. Have you ever found yourself standing in front of the fridge at midnight, opening door after door as though you're hunting for your next meal, even though you just ate dinner? You feel a gnawing in your gut that isn't hunger. It's deeper. It's primal. Your brain treats you like you're starving, sending urgent signals for sugar as if you were lost on a frozen tundra with nothing but a handful of berries to your name. That trembling craving for something sweet feels impossible to resist because for your ancestors, resisting it meant death. Picture the world, tens of thousands of years ago. Food was scarce, every calorie mattered. When our ancestors stumbled upon fruit or honey, it was like discovering buried treasure. Their brains lit up with relief and reward, storing energy for famine that might last weeks. That wiring kept them alive. But in today's world, that same wiring turns against us. The ancient circuits that once protected us now trick us into overeating, convincing us that every cookie is life or death. Walk into any supermarket and you'll see the trap laid bare. Shelves groan under neon-labeled cereals, candy bars wrapped in glossy paper, drinks fizzing with sweetness. Every processed snack is engineered to send your neurons into celebration. One bite floods your brain with dopamine. You feel triumphant. But within minutes, the sugar high collapses, leaving you jittery, irritable, craving more. You reach again, not because you're hungry, but because your brain insists that without another hit of sweetness, you might starve. It's not your fault. Your body's ancient software misreads the world. It sees sugar and labels it urgent energy. It whispers, eat now or perish. In reality, you're sitting on your couch, heart pounding, stomach full, scrolling through your phone. That panic is a relic. It's the echo of danger in your own biology. You're no longer facing a wild savannah. You're facing an office break room. Yet your brain still sounds the alarm. The brilliance of this system is its subtle brutality. Each sweet snack trains you to want more. Dopamine surges, then fades. Tolerance builds. Before long, a single spoonful of jam barely registers. You need more sugar to feel the same relief. It's the same trap that drugs use. Your brain associates sweetness with survival. It adapts, it rewires itself to demand ever higher doses. You become addicted to a survival instinct that no longer applies. And think about the toll this takes. You blame yourself for lack of willpower, for weakness, for giving in again. You swear tomorrow will be different. Yet tomorrow comes and the cycle repeats. You wake foggy, tired. You drag yourself through the morning until the mid-morning craving hits. Your energy crashes. Suddenly, sugar seems like salvation. You inhale pastries at a meeting, ice cream at lunch, candy at 3 o'clock. The sugar roller coaster steals your focus, your mood, your sense of control. Behind the scenes, food corporations are watching your primal wiring like puppeteers. They hire food scientists to calculate the exact blend of sugar, fat, and salt that hijacks your reward system. They don't just sell you cookies, they sell you a chemical obsession. You're a lab rat with a wallet. Every glossy advertisement, every strategically placed snack rack is a beacon calling your brain's ancient survival circuits into action. And you pay for the privilege of being manipulated. Stress, too, stokes the flames. When you're anxious or lonely, your brain craves sugar as a salve. One chocolate bar feels like a hug from the past. It whispers, everything will be okay, as stress hormones recede. But the relief is fleeting. As soon as the sugar dissipates, stress surges back with a vengeance. You feel guilt, shame, regret. You might eat again to escape those feelings. You're caught in a feedback loop where your own brain is both seller and buyer of false comfort. Beneath every craving lies a core question. What are you really hungry for? You might think you need a snack. In truth, you need rest, connection, purpose. Yet your brain defaults to sugar because that's how it learned to survive. It's easier to pop a candy than to have a difficult conversation or to sit quietly with your own thoughts. Sugar is the quick fix, the ancient solution to a modern void. Breaking free starts with awareness. Notice the pattern. Feel the tension in your chest, the pulse in your veins, the insistence in your mind. Recognize that this panic is an old code misfiring in your modern life. You have the power to interrupt the cycle. Pause before you reach for that bag of sweets. Ask yourself what you really need. A glass of water, a walk outside, a moment of rest. You might still choose the sugar sometimes, but when you do, you'll do it consciously, not under the sway of a survival instinct from long ago. Your craving for sugar isn't a character flaw. It's a reminder of how deeply your brain is rooted in the past. It's proof that your mind still thinks it's hunting for berries on a forest floor. And it's exactly that dissonance, ancient wiring clashing with modern life, that screws you over in the world you actually inhabit. Only by understanding this primal mismatch can you begin to reclaim control over your own desires and find a healthier way to nourish both body and mind. Soon you'll discover why every unfamiliar face triggers an ancient alarm in your head. You step off the train into the station, and every fiber of your being tenses. A person turns the corner, and your breath catches. Your mind flashes a warning, stranger. You don't know them, you don't know what they want, and your brain stakes its claim. You must prepare for danger. Deep in your limbic system, your amygdala ignites, firing off a surge of adrenaline that makes your heart pound, your vision narrow, your senses sharpen. Millennia ago, this reflex saved lives, alerting our ancestors to predators crouched in tall grass. Today, it kicks in at the sight of a backpack or a hoodie. Your brain functions like an overzealous smoke detector, blowing a shrill alarm at every hint of steam. False positive is better than false negative. It reasons. So it treats every unfamiliar face as a potential spark. Better to sweat a harmless passerby than to miss a genuine threat. Yesterday, you crossed paths with someone walking their dog. They glanced backward, and you interpreted it as hostility. You gripped your bag harder, veered onto the opposite sidewalk, and quickened your pace. Hours later, you shook your head at your own overreaction, yet in that moment you were utterly convinced you were protecting yourself. Your mind builds lightning-fast categories based on clothing, posture, skin tone, snap judgments meant to separate tribe from outsider. Those shortcuts once kept you from straying into another band's territory. Today they fuel unfounded fears, stereotype strangers, drive you inward. You apply those tags before your conscious mind can whisper that most people mean no harm. Media stories reinforce the belief that any stranger could be the next headline. Every sensational report of a rare crime lingers in your neural circuits, strengthening the conviction vigilance above all else. You swallow that narrative whole, reinforcing fear pathways until every new face activates your personal threat matrix. In bustling airports and crowded cafes, your brain never sleeps. You scan expressions for anger or aggression, map escape routes in your head. At day's end, you feel drained, not from physical exertion, but from the relentless mental loop of what if, replaying in your skull. And still, the dangers you imagine almost never come. The courier at your door isn't a scorpion lurking in disguise. The stranger on the platform isn't scanning your pockets, yet your brain persists in scanning, plotting, rehearsing fatal scenarios that never unfold. Each time you treat someone as a possible danger, you reinforce walls around your heart. You avert your eyes, cross the street, dismiss invitations to conversation. You keep strangers at a distance, even when opening up could bring connection, joy, understanding. Waking up alone in a hotel hallway feels like stepping into a minefield. You clutch your key, convinced shadows hold lurking threats, and decline the brief chat the stranger offers about the weather. Your protective wiring rewires social instincts into isolation. This clash between ancient survival wiring and modern social life is a neurological glitch. Fear that once guarded becomes a jailer in cities teeming with strangers. In seeking safety, your brain narrows your world and steals spontaneity. Beyond missed connections, chronic hypervigilance exacts a steeper toll: anxiety, sleepless nights, a body laced with stress hormones long after danger has passed. You live in a state of readiness for battles that almost never arrive, but awareness grants power. When your skin tingles at a stranger's glance, you can pause and remind yourself, most faces hold no threat. You can challenge automatic judgments, allow curiosity to crack open the door. Over time, you can retrain your threat detector. A nod to someone on the train, a brief hello to the person beside you at the cafe, small acts that whisper the world is kinder than it seems. Each moment of trust rewrites your brain's relentless caution. Reclaiming balance doesn't mean ignoring real risks. It means listening to your alarm when it matters and silencing it when it doesn't. It means letting your heart open just enough to see a stranger as a story waiting to be told, not a predator waiting to pounce. Your brain sees strangers as potential threats, but deep inside, it longs to believe that every face could be a friend. What happens next when your mind despises uncertainty and begins predicting the worst possible outcomes? In the hush before dawn, as the world lies in shadow and silence, your mind is already racing through every possible disaster. You lay awake, tangled in sheets, convinced you left the stove on or missed a crucial deadline. You feel the weight of every unmade decision pressing down on your chest, even though nothing has actually gone wrong yet. Your thoughts scramble for the worst-case scenario, as if imagining calamity could somehow prevent it. Your heart pounds and your breath catches as neurons fire alarms in your brain. You taste copper, you feel sweat beading on your skin, your muscles coil like a spring, about to snap. Though no threat stands at your door, your body behaves as if a predator lurks in the shadows. Your mind hijacks your senses, broadcasting emergency signals that feel all too real. This isn't a modern glitch, it's a relic of ancient survival. Millennia ago, our ancestors, who assumed every rustle in the grass was a tiger, were more likely to live another day than those who dismissed danger. Your brain inherited a bias toward negativity, a tendency to expect the worst rather than the best. Think of it as a smoke detector, so sensitive that it goes off when you burn toast. A false positive is annoying in the kitchen, but in the wild it could be life or death. Today, it mostly just steals your peace. But in the modern world, there is no saber-toothed tiger, only emails unread and news alerts blinking in the night. Your primal wiring still interprets uncertainty as a direct threat. When a coworker's lips twitch in what looks like disapproval, your mind rewinds that moment a dozen times, trying to uncover the hidden criticism. You replay conversations looking for traps, building elaborate theories of betrayal and humiliation, long before any real evidence exists. Picture sending a simple text and waiting for a reply. Hours pass. Your brain leaps straight to abandonment or anger. Did you say something wrong? Are they upset with you? Suddenly, you're rehearsing apologies you haven't even written. Your imagination paints every possible insult in their silence. You shrink beneath the shadow of your own fears, convinced you must prepare for the worst before it ever arrives. And here's what's even more unsettling. The scenarios your mind fabricates begin to feel like facts. You start acting as if someone is plotting against you, guarding yourself in ways that push people away. You become the anxious friend who cancels plans at the last minute, or the partner who demands constant reassurance. Your brain's worst guesses reshape your behavior, and you blame yourself or others for problems you created internally. Worse still, this negativity bias digs its claws into your memory. You recall the time you stumbled on a stage or froze in an interview with vivid clarity, but you can't remember a dozen moments when you spoke confidently or laughed freely. Failures loom large, successes slip through your mind like smoke. Your internal narrative turns into a horror story, one terrifying chapter after another, erasing the quiet moments of triumph and connection. The relentless news cycle only fans the flames. Headlines scream catastrophe around the clock. Push notifications buzz with stories of conflict, disaster, and scandal. Your brain interprets every snippet as confirmation that the world teeters on the brink of collapse. You never rest because you never stop scanning for threats. Your days blur into nights and back into days, all under the oppressive gaze of imagined horrors. This habit of predicting the worst often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you anticipate disaster in a relationship, you guard yourself, withdraw, refuse vulnerability. That coldness breeds distance, and the connection you feared losing drifts away. When you suspect business deals will fall apart, you approach negotiations with suspicion and cynicism, poisoning the very trust you need to succeed. By preparing for the worst, you invite it. Yet, some will insist that worst-case thinking has its upside. They'll tell you it makes you cautious, protects you from recklessness. And to an extent, that's true. Being alert to risk can save you from foolish mistakes. But if every decision is filtered through a lens of dread, you never seize new opportunities. You let fear decide for you. You remain frozen at the threshold of life's possibilities, too terrified of the next step to move forward. Even soothing advice feels laced with threat. A friend suggests a change, and your mind zeroes in on every way it could go wrong. Embrace a new career, and you'll end up broke or humiliated. Take a vacation, and you'll get lost, robbed, or stranded. Try something unknown, and you'll forever regret having left the familiar. Uncertainty morphs into a predator stalking your future, and you cling to routine as if it were a lifeline. But here's a paradox. The only thing truly guaranteed in life is uncertainty. Every plan carries the seed of its own failure. Every relationship threatens heartbreak. Every moment teeters between joy and suffering. Yet your brain fights that truth, as if denial were a shield. It conjures worst-case fantasies to feel in control, even though control is the very thing you lose when you surrender to fear. So you find yourself living in the space between reality and nightmare, unable to tell which is which. You mistake possibility for peril, and that confusion steals your courage. Every day becomes a battle against your own predictions, a struggle to trust yourself when your mind insists on imagining doom. Now pause and sense the irony. Nothing in life is as dangerous as the stories you tell yourself. Your brain's attempt to guard you ends up imprisoning you. You carry chains forged from your worst thoughts, and each link is reinforced by countless imagined catastrophes. Tomorrow morning, as uncertainty knocks at your door once again, remember this: your brain's war against the unknown is a relic you no longer need. If you resist its alarm bells, you might discover life beyond the shadows it casts. And if you ever want to stop fearing every whisper of change, you'll have to face a deeper fear still, the fear of standing alone without the herd's protection. This ancient instinct to follow the crowd may feel comforting, but what happens when the herd itself becomes your prison? You stand on the edge of a crowded room, but conversation swirls around you like a current, and you find yourself nodding along to opinions you barely feel. You laugh when everyone laughs, even if the joke feels hollow. You mimic gestures, match tone, align yourself with every shift in mood. You repeat the same catchphrases, copy the same slang, because it feels safer than standing out. But have you ever wondered why fitting in feels like your only option? Why rejection feels like a threat to your very survival? Deep inside your skull, a primal circuit flips on the moment you sense isolation. Our ancestors lived and died by the pack, and your brain holds a record of every threat that came from being alone. Being cast out from the clan meant hunger, exposure to the elements, attack by predators, and a swift end. Today your mind still interprets social rejection as a threat, as visceral as a predator's tooth. It whispers that belonging equals safety, that solitude is a sentence to certain doom. Within that ancient network, neurons reward conformity with a chemical embrace. A rush of relief washes over you whenever you blend seamlessly with the majority. Dopamine spikes each time you find common ground, a silent high coaxing you toward groupthink. Meanwhile, cortisol surges at the first tingle of exclusion, a chemical alarm blaring until you mend that social rift. Your brain trades honest expression for communal harmony without a second thought, quietly rewriting your preferences to match the prevailing mood. Modern life doesn't feel like foraging on a plain, yet your survival instinct still craves meaningless approval. You scroll through social media, watching a trend explode, and you join the chorus without question. You adopt fashion choices you barely understand, embrace buzzwords you never thought you'd use, all to stay nestled in the warmth of virtual acceptance. Every friend request, every like, every heart-shaped icon floods your system with a fleeting sense of safety. Suddenly, you're no longer an individual, but a node in a vast approval network. Picture a herd of wildebeests thundering across the savannah, each individual swept up in the momentum, driven by the same impulse to survive. Now imagine that herd in the digital world, its pulse measured in trending hashtags and viral challenges. The momentum builds like a tidal wave, and one by one you find yourself swept along. Facts distort under the weight of repetition, nuance drowns in the roar of consensus, and critical thought sinks beneath the surface. Before you know it, you're applauding ideas you would have once rejected, mistaking the crowd's roar for truth. But what if this herd is steering you toward disaster? History is littered with mass panics that sparked witch hunts, moral crusades that scarred generations, and viral dares that led to real harm. You might imagine yourself immune, an island of reason, but the moment social pressure builds, your defenses erode. We watch these tragedies unfold and wonder how so many sane people could be led astray. The answer lies in the same primal wiring that once saved lives. Your brain prioritizes belonging over honesty, safety over insight, community over conscience. It values the comfort of consensus more than the clarity of independent thought. Every moment you silence your inner voice to match the group, you give away fragments of yourself. You surrender your unique perspective, the spark that makes you irreplaceable. You accept realities filtered through dozens of others before they ever reach your mind. You become a mirror, reflecting what the crowd expects, losing sight of your own reflection in the process. And the worst part, you barely notice it happening. Each small concession feels trivial in isolation until you realize you've handed over the keys to your identity without any fight. Isolation feels intolerable, but conformity carries its own terror. When the herd demands loyalty, dissent is met with scorn, ridicule, or silent ostracism. You risk judgment, humiliation, or subtle exclusion for daring to speak up. Your brain remembers those social punishments, the tightening of the group's gaze, the cold shoulder, the quiet whispers. It builds walls around your thoughts to protect you from rejection, training you to stay silent, your head bowed in unspoken capitulation. You learn to swap authenticity for acceptance, as if it were a fair trade. But imagine if each time you stifled a thought, your world grew smaller. Picture your inner landscape shrinking, walls closing in around your beliefs, dreams, and doubts. Imagine your true self, lost in a sea of echoes, the voice you once trusted, swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Over time, the constant pressure to conform becomes a life sentence, a torture you embrace willingly. When you finally ask yourself where your own opinions went, you realize there is no clear answer. You dissolved into the herd long ago. Recognizing this herd instinct is the first crack in the illusion. The moment you see yourself as more than a single sheep in a stampede, you hold the power to step aside. Will you follow the crowd into the darkness, or will you embrace the unease of standing alone? Solitude may sting like cold rain, but it can also sharpen your vision and strengthen your core. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting connection. It means choosing connections that honor your true self rather than swallowing it whole. This isn't a manifesto against community or a plea to abandon human bonds. It's a warning that your primal brain will always lean toward the largest group, no matter how perilous the path. Because true connection thrives not on blind agreement, but on the courage to reveal your own shape. The real challenge lies in consciously deciding when to join, when to question, and when to stand apart. Your sense of belonging should be a choice, not a reflex. And only then can you create a life that reflects your voice, your values, and your unedited truth. Just when you think safety lies in numbers, wait to see how your mind will trade deep focus for the allure of constant novelty. Imagine you sit at your desk, a blank document in front of you, ready to write something important. But before you can begin, your phone buzzes, an alert, a headline, a brief snippet promising excitement. You tap, you scroll, your focus evaporates. You chase the next shiny thing, the next dopamine hit, trading depth for a fleeting thrill. In the cavernous depths of your primitive brain, novelty signaled opportunity or threat. Early humans survived by investigating new landscapes, unfamiliar scents, strange animal tracks. Novelty meant food, water, safety, or danger. Every unexpected sound or movement sharpened your senses, kept you alive. Your brain learned to crave new stimuli, to reward exploration. It wired itself to seek that spark of discovery, to keep you alert in an unpredictable world. Today, your brain's craving for novelty collides with a digital avalanche. Infinite news feeds, videos, notifications, each promising something more thrilling than before. Algorithms harvest your attention, offering endless choices in milliseconds. Your primal wiring, once a lifesaver, now becomes a saboteur. Instead of guiding you through wilderness, it drifts between distractions. Focus, that scarce resource, gets sacrificed on the altar of novelty, over and over, without relief. Every tap, swipe, and click delivers a tiny dopamine surge, teaching your brain to expect instant gratification. That surge feels good, so you keep chasing it. Each time you abandon a task for something new, you reinforce the behavior. Your attention span shortens, replaced by a frantic search for the next hit. Deep thinking requires sustained focus, patience, and often discomfort. But your brain has learned to flee at the first hint of boredom. Picture yourself trying to finish a project. You block out time, determined to dive deep. But a ping pulls you away. An urgent message, a breaking update, a curious clickbait headline. You look up, blink, and suddenly your focus is gone. 10 minutes later, you wonder why you feel empty, unfulfilled. Your mind wandered. Tasks lie half-finished. Anxiety bubbles from the uncompleted work. Frustration rises, and you blame yourself for being unfocused. Your brain is like a restless child in a candy store, easily lured by every new flavor, every glittering wrapper. Focus is the carrot on a stick you never quite reach. Each time you resist, that child yanks the stick back, demanding something more exciting. Even the simplest task becomes a battleground between curiosity and discipline. And because the child always wins, your best intentions crumble beneath the weight of constant novelty. The tragedy is that your creativity, your capacity for deep insight, suffers the most. Ideas need incubation, quiet reflection, the slow simmering of thought. But your brain rejects the slow burn, preferring quick sparks. Projects lack depth. Solutions remain superficial. Even your memories fragment, because meaningful moments require attention. When you trade focus for novelty, you pay with the richness of experience, leaving only superficial fragments of a life half-lived. Every app, every website, every device is engineered to exploit this weakness. Notification badges glow like lighthouses, calling you to shore. Autoplay cues feed you endless episodes, one after another. Headlines scream for your gaze. Even your calendar fills with flimsy commitments, creating mental clutter. You live in a maze of stimuli, each turn promising novelty. Yet the deeper you wander, the more lost you feel, drowning in options with no clear path. Your brain whispers a lie. You might miss something vital. That fear of missing out, or FOMO, pulses like a heartbeat. What if that update holds the one piece of information that changes everything? What if the next scroll reveals hidden truth? You can't risk complacency, so you chase novelty, convinced it shields you from ignorance. But in truth, it fences you into a prison of perpetual distraction, far from clarity. You believe you can multitask, skimming through 10 things at once. But your brain isn't a CPU. It switches between tasks, fragmenting effort and burning energy. Each switch carries a hidden cost. Depth requires single-minded focus, but you've trained your mind to flit. You convince yourself you're efficient, but the reality is grim. Half-completed tasks, distorted deadlines, mounting stress. You're busy, yes, but you're never truly productive or present. You hate this about yourself. You loathe the guilt that ticks like a clock in your mind. You tell yourself you're lazy, undisciplined, broken. But this isn't a character flaw, it's a primal glitch. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The shame you feel isn't personal, it's a symptom of a system built for distraction. Recognizing that shifts power from blame to understanding. Awareness is your first defense. Notice when the lure of novelty strikes. Feel the itch, the restlessness, the pull towards something new. Pause, breathe. Remind yourself of what truly matters to you. Training your brain to resist novelty takes deliberate hardship. The first moments of focus feel heavy, like pushing a boulder uphill. But with each effort, you strengthen mental muscles and the weight lightens. Soon, focus becomes easier than distraction. Imagine the power of uninterrupted thought, the thrill of uncovering insights that elude scattered minds, the calm satisfaction of finishing what you start. Your ideas gain power, your problems reveal solutions, your relationships deepen because you're genuinely present. You trade the frantic chaos of endless novelty for the profound focus of real engagement. Your brain, once a servant of momentary thrills, can become an ally in creating meaning. But remember, every time you yield to the next distraction, you chip away at your potential. You barter hours for seconds of excitement. You lose the thread that binds ideas into innovation, presence into connection. The song of novelty might be irresistible, but hidden beneath its melody is a trap. Focus is your revolution, quiet, uncelebrated, yet world-changing. It demands sacrifice, yes, but the prize is a mind freed from the tyranny of endless novelty. Yet when you finally allow stillness, your brain will scream that rest is nothing more than laziness. Have you ever felt that sinking sense of panic, the moment you stop moving? You sink into the couch after a long day, willing yourself to relax, and suddenly your mind erupts in alarms. Every silence feels like a countdown to disaster. Your heart pounds as if you've pressed an invisible accelerator. You tell yourself it's fine, you deserve this break, yet beneath the calm you hear a persistent whisper. You're being lazy. That whisper grows into a roar, and before you know it, you're fidgeting, checking your phone, guilt gnawing at your ribs. Rest should be relief. Instead, it feels like punishment. In the deep past, when survival depended on every movement, rest meant danger. A still body in the grass was an easy target for predators. When you paused, your ancestors risked losing their place in the hunt or being left behind. Their brains were wired to treat stillness as a threat. That survival code lives on in you, echoing through neural pathways older than language. Your lizard brain, invisible but insistent, still floods your body with adrenaline whenever you try to pause. It doesn't care about modern comforts. It only remembers the cold stare of hungry eyes in the dark, ready to strike when you stopped moving. Your mind acts like a relentless sentinel, scanning for signs of trouble the instant you drop into stillness. It's constantly listening for rustling leaves that might signal danger, even if that danger is gone. In a world without predators lurking in shadows, this hypervigilance feels absurd, but your primal wiring never got the memo. It equates rest with vulnerability, and vulnerability with destruction. So it punishes you, releases stress hormones, tightens muscles, and sets off a cascade of guilt and anxiety, all without your permission. You lie still, but inside your skull a war rages. This punishment isn't abstract. It's a visceral assault on your body. Cortisol surges through your veins like a toxin, turning each breath shallow and each heartbeat urgent. Your palms sweat, your gaze sharpens, your thoughts sprint. This isn't tiredness. You're energized for fight or flight. And why? Because your brain believes you're shirking your duty, abandoning the safety of constant motion. Irony drips from every cell. The real threat isn't predators. It's the part of you that fears the quiet. Rest becomes a war zone, and you're both the witness and the wounded. In today's world, rest is framed as a reward waiting at the end of a punishing race. You earn weekends, vacations, brief pauses between burnouts. But even as you arrive, guilt greets you at the door. Why feel guilty? Because your brain still thinks a stationary body is an unproductive body. You carry that ancient verdict into email auto-replies, into unspent leave days, into sick days you refuse to take. You've internalized the idea that every second not spent hustling is a second stolen from your worth. And the more you chase that worth, the further rest slips away. Hustle culture thrives on this theory. You're told that exhaustion is a badge of honor, that busyness proves your importance. Every completed task delivers a rush of dopamine, reinforcing the cycle. The moment you stop checking boxes, the brain punishes you with discomfort. It shrinks your sense of achievement, whispering that you're slacking off. You crave that next fix, the next project, the next to-do list, the next deadline. Even your leisure becomes another task to conquer. Paradise transforms into yet another goal. The cycle repeats until you forget what true rest feels like. Then there's the irony of seeking rest in bed. Nightfall should bring relief, but instead you stare at ceilings, tangled in invisible chains. Sleep feels like surrender, and surrender triggers resistance. Your mind floods with last-minute tasks, future worries, half-remembered regrets. Each failed attempt to drift off intensifies the punishment. You feel shame for every minute you lie awake. Insomnia mutates into proof that you're not doing enough. You blame yourself for this, but the root lies in ancestral survival circuits that refuse to let your guard down, even under the blanket, meant for comfort. This cycle of punishment then births guilt that feeds exhaustion and anger. You wake groggy, resentful, anxious to jump into motion and escape the shame of idleness. You push yourself harder, chase efficiency, embrace even deeper fatigue. And at every turn, your brain watches, ready to penalize any hint of rest. You believe you're at fault, as if a resting body is a crime and you're the culprit. But the unseen dictatorship of primal wiring is the real judge. You're trapped in a loop of self-blame, where rest is the sentence and guilt the executioner. But what if you refuse to obey? What if you rewire that ancient sentinel? By consciously choosing rest, by training your brain that stillness equals safety instead of shame. You can undermine its tyranny. Start small. Pause for 10 quiet seconds and breathe. Notice the tremor in your chest. Sit with it and remind yourself that your body is not under attack. Celebrate the calm. Over time, those tiny moments accumulate, crack by crack, dismantling the old survival code. Rest becomes a radical act, a defiance of primal fear, and the first step toward genuine well-being. And in just a moment, you'll discover how your mind equates frantic motion with true significance. Picture yourself sprinting through another day, juggling meetings, messages, and endless to-do lists. Your phone buzzes like an alarm bell, demanding your attention, insisting you're needed. You race from task to task, your heart pounding, convinced that every moment spent busy seals your worth. But have you stopped to ask yourself why busyness feels so important, and why your brain rewards it as if it were survival itself? You've been taught to associate hustle with success. You wear overload like a badge, yet beneath the adrenaline there's unease. You feel hollow victories piling up. You triumph over tasks only to find new ones waiting. Your primal brain, etched with ancient survival wiring, mistakes motion for meaning. Back when danger stalked the wild, constant vigilance kept you alive. In the modern world, that same wiring convinces you that perpetual activity equals significance. Why do you believe that when you're frantically occupied, you're more deserving of respect? It isn't logic. It's your brain seeking validation through dopamine. Every completed task delivers a hit, a whisper of reward. Your mind learns quickly. Busyness feels good. It signals that you're contributing, avoiding the dread of idleness. Left alone with empty time, you confront uncertainty. The silence echoes questions you don't want to answer. Activity drowns out doubt. Think of busyness as a costume you slip into. It disguises insecurity. It masks fear. In a crowded cafe, the person typing furiously on a laptop seems important. But watch closer. Their gaze flickers to the door, their shoulders tense, as if awaiting judgment. Their hands don't pause. They fear stillness more than deadlines. They need busyness to avoid the quieter question: who are you when you're not working? Your culture applauds the overloaded, meetings scheduled back to back, vacations sacrificed for projects. You compare calendars like trophies. You envy the person with no free slot, the one whose life seems more vital because it's packed. Social media thrives on this. The perfect shot of work from somewhere exotic, the coffee meetings, the packed agendas. You measure yourself against that curated frenzy, believing busyness is a currency of worth. Yet, beneath that currency lies a trap. Busyness erodes creativity. It frays relationships, it drains joy. When your brain equates importance with hectic pace, you lose the art of deep thought. Shallow tasks fill every crevice. You multitask until nothing truly holds your focus. You joke that you'll rest when you retire, but retirement in your mind is always decades away, always just out of reach. Consider the achiever who sacrificed everything for success. They climbed the ladder, earned accolades, but fell asleep to the hum of unanswered emails. They woke at dawn to keep pace with their own ambitions. Their family memories blurred. Their health waned. Busyness delivered rewards, yes, wealth, prestige, titles, but it stole something irreplaceable: time to breathe, to wonder, to simply be. Breaking free requires breaking that ancient wiring. You must relearn idleness as creative soil rather than threat. You must rewire reward pathways to prize meaningful presence over frantic motion. Start by pausing intentionally. Sit in stillness until your brain complains. Feel the anxiety as a tremor you can observe, not obey. Notice how the urge to fill every moment with noise is just a habit, not a necessity. Ask yourself what truly matters. Not the items crossed off the list, but the moments that stir your soul, a conversation that lingers. A walk unhurried by calls, a thought that emerges in silence. These are the achievements your primal brain tries to bury under busy work because they feel risky. Risky because they involve vulnerability, wonder, and uncertainty. But they are what make life rich. Your brain will resist. It will prod you with phantom deadlines and phantom guilt. But with each pause, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You discover that importance isn't proven by panic. It's revealed in presence. Genuine connection blooms when you're not distracted. Creativity sparks when you're not rushing. Purpose emerges when you're open to possibility, not strapped to a timer. Recognize that busyness is a mirror, reflecting your fear of emptiness. It's comfortable in its relentless rhythm because it keeps you from facing life's deeper questions. But comfort through chaos is still a prison. True freedom comes when you learn to stand in stillness and feel whole. You don't have to justify every moment with productivity. You only need to honor your own desire to live fully. Your mind has been tricked into believing that motion equals meaning. But the greatest discoveries often happen in the pause between heartbeats. The next breath you take in stillness could reveal a clarity you never knew existed. And once you taste that freedom from frantic pace, you'll see how hollow busyness truly is. Coming next, you'll uncover why your mind clings to every little extra, hoarding just in case, items as though tomorrow's survival depends on yesterday's leftovers. Picture yourself opening the front door after a long day, only to be met by a hallway stacked with boxes, bags, and packages you don't even remember ordering. Some still have price tags dangling, others are dulled by months of dust. You assure yourself you might need these things someday: extra batteries, spare light bulbs, old journals, random cables, just in case. But when exactly is that day? Why does a voice in your mind keep whispering that every empty corner must be filled? Why does your brain obsessively hoard just in case items, even when your cupboards are already overflowing? You're not losing your mind, you're tapping into something ancient. Deep within you resides a primal brain wired for scarcity. Long before 24-hour convenience stores existed, our ancestors battled hunger, brutal winters, and countless unknown threats. They cached nuts, air-dried meat, and tubers to survive lean seasons. They memorized hidden springs and berry bushes. They lived by a simple rule: gather now, keep always, never let go. That instinct etched itself into our neural circuits, echoing the same message every time you see a bargain. Today, scarcity looks very different. Starvation doesn't lurk behind your pantry door, yet every sale, every buy one, get one offer triggers the same alarm. Black Friday looms like a once-in-a-lifetime emergency, compelling you to snag 5 shirts when one could do. Your brain treats routine discounts as vital stores for an imagined winter, convincing you that your future self sits shivering in darkness, grateful for that extra flashlight you never test. Remember the great toilet paper panic? Supermarket shelves emptied overnight as people stockpiled rolls, convinced disaster lay around the corner. And while you filled your garage with cellulose, you never once ran out. You built a fortress of security out of panic, only to discover that walls made of cardboard offer no real protection. Every unopened box in your living room, Every gadget hidden in a drawer becomes fuel for anxiety. A single just-in-case purchase morphs into an anchor, weighing down your freedom. You navigate narrow paths of clutter, your attention fractured among half-forgotten purchases. With every glance, a knot tightens in your chest. What if I throw this away and regret it? What if letting go means losing the only safety you have? It all comes down to loss aversion. Your brain values avoiding loss more than seeking gain. Discarding a 30-pence pen hurts more than finding 30 pence. Feels good. That's why you keep stacks of office supplies you never use. The pain of letting go outweighs the pleasure of freeing up space, so you cling instead, hoarding comfort that never truly comes. Underlying this is the illusion of control. You believe that if you gather enough canned beans and spare batteries, you can outrun chaos. But chaos is unpredictable. No stockpile can prepare you for every twist. Meanwhile, you waste time, money, and space on items that never save you. Your resources vanish into the corners of your home, draining possibilities from the life you're actually living. Yet, your brain rewards little acts of gathering. A thrill surges when that order ships. You congratulate yourself for being smart enough to snag a bargain. Dopamine spikes. The next impulse arrives, and you repeat the cycle. Bit by bit, your life becomes a museum of past anxieties. The real issue isn't your hallway or your closet. It's that you trust your brain when it insists you're not prepared enough for some distant emergency. Breaking free means naming the lie whispering in your limbic system. It means rehearsing a different mantra. I have what I need, and truly believing it. It means confronting each just-in-case item and asking, when did I last use this? In a real crisis, could I get what I need then? 99 times out of 100, you could. You live in a world built for abundance, not famine. Start small. Pick a single drawer or shelf. Empty it completely. Feel panic rising as items pile at your feet. Then, one by one, decide, keep because it serves you now, or let it go. Feel the lightness that follows. With each release, you retrain your brain's survival circuits, teaching yourself that scarcity no longer reigns. Of course, the old wiring fights back. Your primal instincts will remind you of what-if scenarios. They'll whisper that you need to hold on. Listen, but don't obey. Recognize that the fear you feel is a shadow of ancient hardships, not the reality of your life. You may feel a knot of anxiety in your gut. Breathe through it. Remember that genuine security lies in resilience, adaptability, creativity, and knowing you can face uncertainty head-on. Hoarding just-in-case items feels like preparation, but it's often procrastination. You delay confronting uncertainty by amassing things. You distract yourself from an unpredictable future by clinging to objects. Yet every object you clutch is another link in a chain you drag behind you. So here lies the choice. Continue feeding the lie that more stuff equals more safety, or challenge that instinct and step into a lighter way of living. Realize that your brain's hoarding reflex once kept you alive in the wild, but now only keeps you tethered. Embrace the freedom of owning only what matters. Feel the space around you once more, unburdened by the weight of just in case. Now that you've seen how your ancestral survival circuits can turn your home into a prison of fear, wait until you discover how those same circuits overvalue the lure of immediate rewards over the promise of future gains. Have you ever promised yourself you'd eat healthier, only to find yourself sneaking a handful of chips the moment you think nobody is watching? That desperate crunch between your teeth, the guilty pleasure flooding your senses, is your brain's primal wiring hijacking your better intentions. It whispers that one moment of taste and comfort is worth more than weeks of disciplined eating, because in the ancient world, your ancestors faced immediate threats, hunger, predators, danger, and indulging whenever possible was survival. Now, imagine you've just received a bonus at work. You could stash it in your savings, watch it grow steadily over months or years, or buy the latest gadget that lights up and beeps and feels instantly gratifying. Your frontal lobe, the seat of long-term planning, urges caution, whispers about future security, about emergencies and the peace that comes from a growing nest egg. But your limbic system, older and louder, screams for the instant jolt of dopamine that comes from spending it now. It floods your brain with the promise of immediate reward, drowning out the distant echo of future benefit. This clash between your impulsive, reward-seeking monkey mind and your slow, calculating adult mind is not a flaw in you, it's the outcome of evolution. Your ancestors survived because they seized opportunities when they arose. If you stumbled across a ripe berry patch or a fresh kill, hesitation could mean starvation. The brain's reward system learned to prioritize that reward signal above all else. Fast forward tens of thousands of years, and that same system still rules you, tugging you toward immediate gratification. In a world where the berries are endless, the money is a swipe away, and the threats are often imagined. Think about exercise. You know the pain of the first mile, the sweat, the burning lung, the aching muscles. Yet you also know the sense of accomplishment that comes weeks later, when you see results, more energy, better sleep, a healthier heart. But each morning when your alarm blares, you feel that primal resistance. The lure of the comforter, the warmth pressing you into sleep, feels infinitely more urgent than some vague improvement that might happen if you push through. Your brain whispers that survival is about energy conservation, not expenditure. It values that moment of avoidance more than the distant promise of better health. And it's not just your body that suffers. Your mind, too, becomes a battleground. Every time you push off a difficult project or scroll social media instead of writing that report, you trade long-term growth for a fleeting hit of idle distraction. Your brain rewards you for this trade with a rush of dopamine, cementing the habit. Over time, you may find yourself chained to habits that feel effortless at first. Checking notifications, doom scrolling, impulsive shopping, until those chains tighten and you barely notice how far you've drifted from your goals. At a deeper level, this short-sighted wiring fuels stress and regret. You chase treats, naps, quick fixes, and in return you earn mounting anxiety about your health, your finances, your relationships. The immediate relief feels good in the moment, but it plants seeds of worry for tomorrow. Your primal brain, in its relentless pursuit of the now, sets you up for a future haunted by what you didn't do, what you didn't save, what you didn't create. Even your relationships bear the scars of this imbalance. You might choose the easy comfort of scrolling alone instead of calling a friend, because firing off a text gives you an immediate sense of connection without the effort of real conversation. Later, you feel a hollow ache of loneliness. Your brain rewarded you for avoidance, but your soul paid the price. To pull back the curtain on this sabotage, you need to understand the brain's reward circuitry. Dopamine surges drive the anticipation of reward more than the reward itself. It's the chase that thrills you, not the catch. Every time you indulge an impulse, you strengthen that neural pathway, making it easier to repeat. The more immediate the reward, the more your brain cements that route. Meanwhile, the path that leads to delayed reward, saving, planning, persevering, remains faint, overgrown with neglect. Breaking free doesn't mean turning off your ancient wiring, it means retraining it. Tiny shifts in your environment can help, remove the chips from your pantry. Automate your savings so you never see the temptation to spend the bonus. Set timers that limit social media visits. Replace impulsive treats with rituals that still feel rewarding, like a cup of herbal tea or a quick walk in the sun. Each small win releases dopamine, retraining your brain to value healthier shortcuts. You can also leverage future rewards by making them feel more immediate. Visualize the payoff of getting fit, earning that diploma, building a business. Create a vision board, a savings thermometer, a daily tally of progress. Celebrate every milestone as if it's a mini victory. Your brain craves that sense of accomplishment. Give it to yourself in real time for the actions that matter. Remind yourself constantly of the gap between desire and regret. Every time you feel the tug of instant gratification, pause and ask, will this choice edge me toward the person I want to be or pull me further away? Feel the weight of that question. Make it visceral. The aim is to awaken your prefrontal cortex, to shine a light on the path to tomorrow so that it outshines the lure of the moment. This battle isn't fought once but 1,000 times each day. And sometimes you'll lose. That's part of being human. But each loss is feedback. Each moment you catch yourself and course correct, you reclaim a fragment of your freedom. Over time, the cumulative effect of tiny victories can outpace the occasional indulgence. Remember, your brain's wiring is a map of where you've been, not a decree of where you must go. You carry a powerful plastic organ capable of rewiring itself. Each choice you make echoes through your neural landscape, carving new trails. Gradually, your brain will learn to prize the long game, to see future gains as real and urgent as an immediate treat. The next time you feel that pang of desire for something immediate, whether it's food, a thrill, or a shortcut, remember who's really pulling the strings. Take a deep breath. Turn your gaze toward the horizon of your own potential. Feel the pull of a life lived on your own terms, built one patient choice at a time. And just when you think you have control, you'll see why under pressure your brain freezes instead of adapting. Have you ever found yourself in a critical moment? Your heart racing, your breath shallow, only to discover that instead of rising to the occasion, your mind seems to lock up completely. Your thoughts stumble over themselves, your decisions slow, your body feels clumsy and hesitant. It's almost embarrassing, because deep down you'd like to think that under pressure you'd adapt, that you'd become sharper, more focused, more heroic. But that's not what happens. The uncomfortable truth is that under pressure, your brain is far more likely to freeze than flourish. Well, start with your biology. Your brain was forged in a brutal world, a world where sudden threats were physical, immediate, and often life or death. In those moments, the brain didn't prioritize calm, rational problem solving. It prioritized sheer survival. That's why when you're under intense stress, your amygdala takes over. It floods your system with stress hormones, hijacks higher reasoning, and plunges you into the primitive modes of fight, flight, or freeze. Often, it picks freeze, because sometimes being still, being undetected, was safer than doing anything at all. But here's where it gets even crueler in the modern world. Most of your threats aren't saber-toothed cats lurking in the bushes. They're job interviews, public speaking, high-stakes conversations, decisions that affect your finances, your relationships, your future. And in these situations, freezing doesn't help you, it sabotages you. Your ancient wiring locks up your cognitive functions at precisely the moment you need them most. Think about how many times this has happened in small, humiliating ways. Someone calls on you unexpectedly in a meeting, and your mind blanks. Or you're confronted with an urgent crisis, an accident on the road, a medical emergency, and afterward you replay it obsessively, realizing all the smart actions you could have taken, if only your brain hadn't betrayed you. The freeze response doesn't just slow you down, it strangles your ability to think creatively, to weigh nuanced options, to respond with the kind of poise you imagine you'd have. It gets worse when you realize this reaction isn't just a momentary lapse. Under prolonged pressure, chronic stress literally reshapes your brain. The areas responsible for memory and learning weaken. The circuits that trigger fear grow stronger, more sensitive, more likely to hijack you again in the future. Your brain trains itself to freeze more easily, not less. Now, you might wonder, why doesn't your brain just learn to adapt? Why doesn't it get sharper with repeated exposure to stress? Because your brain is designed to prioritize certainty over experimentation. Under pressure, it defaults to tried and true patterns, even if those patterns are terrible. It's why athletes can choke under the bright lights of a championship, why seasoned professionals stammer during a critical pitch, why soldiers sometimes freeze despite rigorous training. Under stress, your brain becomes a cautious archivist, rummaging through old habits, terrified to improvise. And this isn't just about you personally. Entire systems exploit this. Think about high-pressure sales tactics, rapid-fire questions in courtrooms, aggressive police interrogations. These scenarios intentionally ramp up pressure because they know your brain is less adaptable when flooded with stress. You're more likely to make mistakes, to comply, to say or do something against your best interest, simply because your mind can't access its full capacity. But perhaps the most unsettling part is how your own expectations set you up for failure. You expect that when the stakes are high, you'll somehow unlock a hidden reservoir of brilliance. Movies and cultural myths have told you for years that heroes emerge in the clutch, that adrenaline sharpens focus, that crisis breeds genius. But that's mostly fiction. More often, crisis just reveals the limits of your wiring. Under intense pressure, your brain reverts, simplifies, and often stalls. Does this mean you're doomed? Not necessarily. Awareness itself is a small form of power. Understanding that your brain's instinct is to freeze under pressure means you can train deliberately to override it. Controlled exposure to stress, rehearsing critical scenarios, building muscle memory. These are ways to edge your brain toward adaptation. But without that deliberate work, your default is clear. Under pressure, your brain isn't your cunning ally. It's an overwhelmed, frightened animal, longing for the comfort of stillness. And speaking of comfort, what if I told you your brain also has a bizarre little quirk that makes it trust short, simple stories over actual hard data, even when that data could save your life? Have you ever noticed how your brain lights up at a story in a way it never does with cold, sterile data? You could be shown a spreadsheet proving that smoking kills millions each year, and your mind might shrug. But tell it a gripping story about a mother who slowly drowned in her own lungs from cancer, who wrote letters to her children as her hands trembled, and suddenly you're riveted, haunted, changed. It's almost unfair how easily your mind surrenders to narrative. It prioritizes these little dramas over the brute force of reality every single time. It isn't because you're weak or stupid. It's because stories hack your primal wiring. Long before numbers or research papers existed, your ancestors gathered around fires and told tales. A story about someone who wandered too far from the camp and was eaten by wolves stuck far better than a list of risk probabilities. Your survival depended on remembering vivid, emotional examples, Even now, your neurons are designed to soak in stories like thirsty roots draw water. But here's where it becomes a liability. In the modern world, where complexity is the rule, your preference for neat narratives leads you astray. When faced with data that demands nuance, your mind craves a protagonist, a villain, a climax, and a moral. That's why you might believe a single tragic anecdote over mountains of statistics. Why you'll share a dramatic personal account online that fits your feelings, even if it wildly misrepresents the truth. Your brain doesn't want to process dry aggregates. It wants the dopamine of a gripping plot. Marketers know this. Politicians know this. That's why campaigns aren't built on dense reports. They're built on carefully curated stories of smiling workers or suffering citizens. They parade selective examples that bypass your critical filters and speak straight to your emotions. Suddenly, you're nodding along, convinced you've seen the whole picture, when in fact you've just glimpsed one cherry-picked scene. It goes deeper. This preference for stories is why conspiracies spread so well. A convoluted theory about secret cabals and sinister plots feels satisfying, complete, even when it's baseless. Meanwhile, the boring truth that life is usually chaos, driven by chance and countless small unrelated events, has no neat arc, no catharsis, no villain to his it. Your mind would rather clutch a false but compelling story than accept an unromantic ambiguity. Think about how this plays out in your own decisions. You read about one person who made a fortune by dropping out of college, and that tale shines brighter in your mind than decades of labor data, showing that, statistically, dropping out increases your risk of lifelong poverty. Or you hear about someone who beat cancer through meditation alone, and that story stands taller in your memory than thousands of peer-reviewed studies. Your brain holds on to vivid narratives because they're easier to retrieve, easier to share, easier to believe. The raw data, it fades into the fog. This is why personal testimonies can seem more real than any hard evidence. If someone looks you in the eye and says, "Trust me, it happened to me," that story imprints on you. Meanwhile, data that contradicts it feels cold, distant, almost suspect. Your ancient mind evolved to privilege first-hand stories because for most of human history, they were all you had to navigate danger. But today, in a world run by complex systems and probabilistic truths, this instinct can lead you into traps of misinformation, superstition, and comforting falsehoods. So next time you find yourself swayed by a powerful story, pause. Ask whether it truly represents reality, or if it's just seducing your primal circuits, short-circuiting your skepticism. Because while stories can inspire, heal, and teach, they can also deceive, distract, and destroy. And speaking of first impressions that can entrench themselves in your mind, even tighter than any story, have you ever wondered why your brain grabs onto the very first piece of information it encounters and stubbornly ignores everything that comes after? Have you ever noticed how stubborn your first impressions are? How quickly your mind grabs onto that first glimpse of someone or something, and how almost nothing afterward can truly shake it. It's like your brain plants a flag on that initial idea and refuses to retreat, no matter how many signs tell it otherwise. This isn't some harmless little quirk. It's a glitch in your primal wiring that shapes your entire reality. Imagine you're introduced to a new coworker. During that very first meeting, they seem a little distant, maybe distracted by something else entirely. Without realizing it, your brain stamps them with a label, unfriendly. Weeks later, you've seen them be generous, patient, even funny, but that original impression never fully dissolves. You keep them at arm's length, interpreting every action through that first shadow. They stay locked in the little mental box your brain built for them in the opening seconds. This is called anchoring. It's your mind's way of being efficient, forming quick judgments to help you navigate a complicated world. But what starts as a helpful shortcut becomes a serious distortion. Your brain uses first impressions like gravity. They pull every new piece of evidence into their orbit, warping it so it fits the initial story. Even more unsettling, studies show your brain actually resists updates. It actively filters out anything that contradicts your first assumption. If that coworker buys everyone coffee, you think, maybe they're trying too hard. If they seem kind, your mind twists it. Probably fake. The brain does mental gymnastics, bending reality to protect the comfort of that first impression. Think about how dangerous this is when it comes to bigger decisions, like hiring someone, trusting someone, or even deciding who deserves your compassion. A quick scan of their clothes, their accent, their body language, and snap, your brain decides. Everything else gets squeezed through that narrow tunnel, and it goes beyond people. You see it in how you judge products, politicians, even ideas. A first good impression, whether it's a slick commercial, a charming smile, or a persuasive slogan, and your brain latches on. After that, evidence doesn't matter much. Negative facts get brushed aside. The anchor holds. Why does your brain do this? Because uncertainty feels threatening. Questioning your judgment takes energy. Changing your mind means admitting you were wrong. So your brain locks the door and throws away the key, telling itself it's safer to stick with the first conclusion, no matter how flawed. But imagine what that costs you. You walk around trapped in a hall of distorted mirrors. You trust people who shouldn't be trusted, and overlook those who deserve your kindness. You buy into ideas simply because they came dressed up nicely the first time you encountered them. You keep believing stories that comfort you instead of confronting realities that could actually set you free. It gets even darker when you realize how easily this instinct is manipulated. But advertisers, politicians, social engineers, they all know your brain anchors fast and deep. They just have to make sure that very first exposure is shiny, appealing, or frightening enough to stick. Once you've swallowed the hook, they know most of the battle is already won. So what can you do about it? You can't turn off this primal reflex. It's built into your brain's architecture. But you can learn to distrust it. You can pause after those lightning-fast first judgments and ask yourself, what if I'm wrong about this? What if my first impression is the least reliable part of this whole picture? Real critical thinking means you actively hunt for evidence that contradicts your initial belief. It means you give yourself permission to update your story, even if it bruises your ego. That's not weakness, that's profound strength. Because the truth is, every time you let a first impression dominate, you're letting an outdated snapshot rule your present. You're ignoring the messy, evolving, beautiful complexity of reality in favor of a quick mental caricature your brain happened to sketch in the first few seconds. The next time you catch yourself clinging to that first impression like a lifeline, remember that anchor doesn't keep you steady. It keeps you stuck, and just wait, because your brain's about to show you another glitch, one even more primal, even more dangerous, how effortlessly it divides the world into us versus them. Have you ever stopped to notice how quickly your mind draws lines, builds fences, decides who belongs inside and who must stay out? It's almost automatic, this splitting of the world into us and them. Your brain does it without asking permission. It sorts people into categories based on language, skin, dress, posture, tiny hints that echo in ancient parts of your mind. This instinct isn't about logic, it's about survival, at least. That's how it started. Thousands of years ago, the humans who trusted only their tribe were the ones who lived long enough to have children. The world was filled with threats, wild predators, rival clans, unpredictable diseases. Being wary of outsiders wasn't just prudent, it was essential. Those primal brains, hardwired for suspicion, passed on their legacy through the generations, building minds like yours and mine, minds forever scanning for danger, forever whispering, "Are they one of us or one of them?" And here's the chilling part, your brain still runs on that outdated software. Even today, surrounded by grocery stores, streaming shows and security cameras, it's as though your neurons never got the memo that the Stone Age is over. When you meet someone new, your mind races to judge them. Friend or foe, or rival, safe or threat. The questions buzz in your subconscious long before you're aware of them. Think about how effortlessly stereotypes slip into place. A single glance, a brief conversation, and suddenly entire narratives bloom in your mind, stories about what kind of person they must be. Your brain does this to save energy, to avoid the exhausting labor of seeing each person as a complex, contradictory individual. It simplifies the world into neat boxes. Is them safe, dangerous, worthy, unworthy? But this mental shortcut has dark consequences. It's the birthplace of prejudice, discrimination, cruelty that feels justified because it serves an ancient instinct. Tribalism is comfortable. It feeds your sense of belonging, of being part of something larger than yourself. That's why it feels good to root for your sports team, to stand shoulder to shoulder, chanting the same slogans, to see your group as noble and right. The flip side, it also means seeing outsiders as suspicious, inferior, even expendable. Watch how easily entire populations become the other. Political leaders understand this deeply. They know that nothing unites a fractured people faster than a shared enemy. Those people, they say, are the real problem, and your brain, eager for certainty, nods along. It feels thrilling, powerful even, to stand with your tribe against a common foe. It's intoxicating to be righteous. Yet, beneath the surface, something uglier festers. This instinct doesn't just split groups, it strips away empathy. When someone isn't one of us, their pain seems less pressing, their joy less important. Their lives become numbers in a headline, abstract tragedies you can comfortably ignore. That's why your heart might break over a neighbor's suffering, yet barely flinch at atrocities continents away. Us versus them, thinking is why empathy has borders. This primal reflex also fuels moral hypocrisy. You excuse the flaws of your group while magnifying every fault in outsiders. Your tribe's corruption is complex, understandable, forgivable. There's proof of depravity. It's how wars ignite, how neighbors turn on neighbors, how people become monsters in each other's eyes simply because their skin, accent or flag is different. So what do you do with a mind like this, wired for division in a world that desperately needs unity? The uncomfortable truth is that awareness alone doesn't dismantle these biases. You can't simply wish them away, but you can catch them in the act. You can notice the instant judgments, question the easy narratives, choose to see individuals instead of categories. It's hard work, exhausting, even because it fights against millions of years of evolution. But it's also the only way to grow beyond the cages your brain tries to build. Because the moment you recognize this default setting, this ancient twitchy alarm that shouts us versus them, you take your first step in choosing something different. You gain the power to disrupt the instinct, to push back against the comforting lie that humanity is best split into opposing camps. You start to see the dangerous beauty of a world where everyone is us, even when your brain begs you to draw lines. And speaking of lines, have you ever wondered why sharing secrets and rumors feels just as satisfying as sharing a meal? In a moment, we're going to explore why your brain rewards gossip almost exactly like it rewards food. Have you ever noticed how your mind lights up when you hear a juicy secret? How your pulse quickens, your ears perk up, your attention narrows into a sharp point, all because someone whispers, "Did you hear what happened?" It doesn't even matter if the information is trivial, cruel, or wildly exaggerated. Your brain gulps it down like a starving animal. Gossip is more than idle chatter. To your primal brain, it's survival fuel. Long before civilization wrapped itself in polished words and polite etiquette, gossip was an evolutionary advantage. In small, tight-knit tribes, knowing who cheated, who stole, who betrayed, or who formed new alliances wasn't entertainment. It was essential data. It meant the difference between being accepted or exiled, supported or sabotaged. Your ancestors' brains were wired to crave this social currency, because failing to track the group's shifting loyalties could cost them food, safety, or their very lives. So, your brain evolved to reward gossip exactly like it rewards food. When someone feeds you a scrap of scandal, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurochemical that fires when you bite into something sweet or satisfying. It says, "Yes, more of that." That keeps us alive. That's why you lean in. Why it feels impossible to look away. Why secrets carry a magnetic pull that logic alone can't override. And it's not just the hearing of gossip that hooks you. Spreading it lights up your reward circuits even more. You're sharing valuable intel, positioning yourself as someone with exclusive access. In ancient contexts, this meant others might rely on you for crucial insights, increasing your standing, securing your place in the group. Your modern brain doesn't care that the stakes are nowhere near life and death. It still reacts as if each whispered rumor is a matter of tribal survival. What's insidious is how seamlessly this fits into your daily life. Office politics, celebrity scandals, online drama, they're all processed by your ancient neural wiring, the same way your ancestors processed, who might be plotting against them around the communal fire. That's why it feels urgent. Why even people who claim they hate gossip often find themselves tangled in it. Your brain mistakes it for protective vigilance. But here's where it gets darker. The more you indulge this instinct, the more it carves grooves into your mind, training you to focus on other people's flaws, failures, and vulnerabilities. It builds a worldview laced with suspicion and judgment. It subtly warps your empathy. You start scanning not for ways to connect, but for tasty morsels of fault, contradiction, or hypocrisy to feed the hungry machine inside your head. Meanwhile, the social consequences can be brutal. Gossip can fracture trust, fuel cruelty, and spread misinformation like a virus. Entire reputations are dismantled over half-truths because your brain craves the thrill of the story more than the weight of the reality. That's the chilling part. Your primal instincts don't care if the gossip is fair or accurate. They just care that it's emotionally charged and socially relevant. Think about how this plays out online. Social media is a technological megaphone for your gossip instinct. Outrage, scandal, betrayal, these go viral because they hijack your brain's ancient wiring. Algorithms recognize this too, pushing content that's divisive and dramatic, precisely because your mind can't resist clicking. It's the same dopamine hit, over and over, conditioning you to prioritize spectacle over substance. But the cruelest irony, your brain rewards you for this short-term rush, even if it undermines long-term bonds and community cohesion. The instinct that once kept small tribes unified now often tears modern relationships apart. Your ancestors needed gossip to survive. You indulge it out of habit, paying with fractured connections and hollow trust. So next time you feel that irresistible tug, when someone says, "Promise you won't tell anyone," but pause. Notice how your heart skips, how your breath hitches. Recognize it for what it is. Your ancient brain salivating over social sugar. Ask whether satisfying that craving serves you, or just serves the ancient circuitry that doesn't know the difference between protecting your clan and destroying your friendships. And speaking of instincts that betray you, have you ever wondered why your brain would rather run from pain than face the truth, even when that truth could set you free? Have you ever wondered why your brain seems so desperately allergic to pain, why it clutches avoidance tighter than it ever holds truth? It's almost embarrassing how predictable it is. Confront it with an uncomfortable fact, a brutal self-insight, or a gnawing regret, and watch how quickly it flinches, squirms, and builds a barricade of excuses. Not because you're weak or cowardly, but because that's what your brain is designed to do. Its first loyalty is not to honesty, it's to your survival. And survival, more often than not, means ducking the truth. Think of your mind as a house with faulty wiring. Every painful thought is a spark threatening to burn the whole place down. So your brain installs shortcuts, psychological circuit breakers that trip at the first sign of overload. Denial, rationalization, selective memory, little lies that keep the lights on, even if they leave certain rooms forever dark. Because in your mind's twisted calculus, it's better to live in a comforting illusion than risk an electrical fire of existential dread. Your body joins this conspiracy too. Ever notice how your stomach churns when you're forced to acknowledge a painful reality? How your pulse quickens, your throat tightens, your muscles brace for impact. That's your nervous system screaming. Retreat, retreat. Physical discomfort is its fail-safe way to steer you away from truths too heavy to bear. It's the ancient predator alarm still wired into your veins, only now, instead of tigers, it's the sharp claws of self-awareness that send you running. This instinct is so powerful, it distorts your entire perception of the world. If acknowledging a fact might lead to pain, shame, loss, guilt, fear, your mind will twist itself into grotesque shapes to avoid it. You'll cherry-pick evidence, cling to dubious narratives, and become strangely loyal to beliefs that keep you safe from hurt, no matter how irrational they are. Your brain isn't looking for what's true. It's looking for what's tolerable. That's why painful memories often slip into shadow. It's why people stay in relationships that quietly erode them, or careers that hollow them out, because the agony of admitting they wasted years is sharper than the daily dull ache of dissatisfaction. It's why the person who wronged you becomes a misunderstood hero in your mind, because hating them outright would mean confronting how deeply you were betrayed. And perhaps worst of all, it's why you sometimes lie to yourself so convincingly that even you can't tell where the fiction ends. This isn't just personal psychology, it's evolutionary engineering. Your ancestors weren't rewarded for raw, unfiltered truth. They were rewarded for staying alive, for spotting threats, dodging emotional injuries that could splinter tribes or shatter alliances. Facing the brutal reality of your own insignificance, or your looming mortality, or your moral failures, none of that helped your ancestors pass on their genes. Avoidance did. The ones who could compartmentalize, repress, or reframe, they survived. They thrived, and you are their heir. Even morality itself often bends to this instinct. When doing the right thing means inviting pain, public shame, ostracism, conflict, Your brain scrambles to rewrite the rules. It's why people justify cruelty, excuse corruption, and stay silent in the face of obvious wrongs. It's not that they don't know the truth, it's that the truth hurts too much to hold, so they drop it, like a burning coal, and protect their hands instead. Yet here's the tragic paradox. In trying so hard to protect you from pain, your brain also shields you from growth, from deep connection, from genuine self-understanding. Because real healing requires first admitting what's broken. Real love means risking heartbreak. Real change demands you stare directly at what you've most feared. Your brain resists all of this because it confuses discomfort with danger, pain with poison. It thinks it's saving your life. All it's really doing is saving you from truth. And maybe that's why so many people feel quietly hollow, because the fortress your mind builds to keep pain out also keeps reality at bay. You become safe, yes, but also numb, disconnected from the raw, vivid intensity of a life lived honestly. Of course, your brain will argue otherwise. It will present 100 soothing rationalizations, each carefully designed to dull the edges of your discomfort. But deep down, there's a part of you that knows, that aches for a kind of unflinching clarity, that wants to stop running, to finally stand in the light of what's real, no matter how it burns. Because only by daring to confront painful truths can you truly own your life, rather than letting your primal wiring script it for you. But if you think this is unsettling, wait until you see how your brain clings to threats long after they've disappeared. Picture your mind like a hyper-vigilant guard dog, trained over thousands of years to keep you alive in a world filled with predators and hidden dangers. Back then, every rustle in the bushes could mean death, every shadow a possible predator. Your ancestors survived precisely because their brains obsessed over threats, replaying them, anticipating them, preparing for the worst long after the danger had passed. That same circuitry is still wired into you, only now the world you live in is radically different. But your brain doesn't know that. It still treats minor embarrassments, awkward conversations, or a critical email from your boss with the same gravity as a stalking tiger. That's why your mind loops through that one stupid thing you said 3 years ago, or why it jolts awake at 3 in the morning to replay your biggest failures. To your primal brain, these are threats to your survival. Reputational harm once meant exile, and exile once meant certain death. So it fixates, clinging to fear like a lifeline, determined to keep you safe. And this isn't some harmless mental quirk. Chronic threat fixation rewires your nervous system. It keeps your cortisol levels high, your muscles tight, your breath shallow. It trains your body to live in a state of constant low-grade emergency. You might not even notice it anymore, how your shoulders hover near your ears, how your jaw stays clenched, how your thoughts ricochet between imagined disasters. You've normalized it, forgetting that peace was ever possible. Your brain is masterful at rationalizing this obsession. It tells you that worrying prepares you, that replaying mistakes makes you better, sharper, more vigilant next time. But mostly, it just exhausts you. It siphons energy that could be spent creating, connecting, or simply being. It builds imaginary monsters and then forces you to stand guard against them, night after night. And the truly insidious part: modern society amplifies this ancient glitch. Algorithms feed you a steady diet of outrage and fear. News cycles blast worst-case scenarios. Social media shows you disasters across the planet in real time. Your brain, primed by evolution to spot threats, gulps it all down. It lights up with concern over things you can't control, problems you can't solve, dangers that are nowhere near you. Yet your body responds as if they're right outside your door. That's why a harsh comment from a stranger online can ruin your day. Why a single piece of negative feedback at work loops in your head, while dozens of compliments fade into static. Your brain was never designed to process global crises or infinite opinions or the relentless hum of digital scrutiny. It was built for close, tangible dangers. Now it's overloaded, treating every ping on your phone like a saber-toothed cat about to pounce. Even your memories are shaped by this bias. You remember pain and humiliation more vividly than joy. Your mind records every slight and embarrassment in high definition, replaying them not to torture you, though it feels that way, but because on some primitive level it believes remembering will keep you from making the same dangerous mistake again. In your brain's calculus, comfort is expendable, survival is not, so you live haunted by ghosts of threats long gone. Conversations that ended years ago still spark a flush of shame. Relationships that broke your heart still hover like storms on the horizon. Your brain keeps circling back, convinced the danger is still present, that you must remain on guard. It doesn't realize the world has changed, that you're not in a tribe of 50 anymore, where one misstep means expulsion and death. That most of your fears now are shadows on a wall. The tragedy is that this relentless vigilance shrinks your life. It keeps you from risks that could bring joy, from connections that require vulnerability, from pursuits that demand failure as part of the process. You become cautious, hesitant, always scanning for the next blow. You trade aliveness for safety, passion for predictability. But here's the unsettling part. Even knowing all this doesn't flip a switch. Awareness helps, but your brain's first loyalty is to your survival, not your happiness. It will keep scanning for threats long after the threats have faded. Because to your primal wiring, it's better to be afraid of 100 harmless things than to miss the one that could end you. And yet, what does this relentless fear cost you? How much life slips through your fingers because you're too busy anticipating disaster? What dreams die stillborn because your brain mistakes discomfort for mortal danger? Maybe you've never paused long enough to truly feel the weight of that. Maybe you're too busy, too distracted, too primed to jump at the next perceived threat. But consider this, what if your constant vigilance is the very thing quietly killing your potential? And if that haunts you, then wait until you see what your brain is willing to sacrifice next, all in the name of chasing status, even when it comes at the cost of your deepest moral convictions. Picture this. You're standing in a crowded room. You glance around, and almost instantly, your mind starts ranking people. Who's more attractive, who seems more powerful, who gets the subtle deference of others. You don't even realize you're doing it. It's automatic, baked into the folds of your brain by millions of years of evolution. This relentless pursuit of status is not some shallow modern vice, it's a primal instinct older than civilization itself. But here's where it twists into something darker. Your brain doesn't just crave status, it craves it even at the expense of your moral compass. Imagine you're offered a simple bargain, a guaranteed elevation in how people see you, a leap in social rank, admiration pouring your way, but it comes at the cost of betraying a friend or compromising a core value you claim to hold dear. You like to think you'd walk away, but would you? Really? Because history, psychology, and your own quiet confessions say otherwise. Look at how effortlessly people slip into hypocrisy when status is on the line. Think of the co-worker who tramples a colleague's reputation just to inch closer to the boss's circle, or the neighbor who donates to charity, not out of compassion, but to bask in the glow of community praise. It's disturbingly easy to rationalize these betrayals. Your brain feeds you comforting lies, insisting that it's strategic, that you're only doing what anyone would in your position. And maybe you are. Status is a currency so powerful that it rewires your sense of right and wrong. Studies show people will cheat, deceive, even harm others if it means climbing the invisible ladder. Not because they're monsters, but because their brains are quietly calculating social advantages, whispering that being seen matters more than being good. Your moral guidelines bend under the weight of your craving to belong, to be admired, to stand just a little higher than the person next to you. Consider how often your own small betrayals slip by unchecked. Ever laughed at a cruel joke just to stay in the group's favor? Ever stayed silent when someone was wronged, simply because speaking up would have cost you socially? These moments feel minor, harmless even, but together they reveal a haunting truth. Your brain is more loyal to status than to the values you proudly claim. And it's not just you, it's everyone. Entire societies are built on this invisible scaffolding of status games. Political leaders posture not to serve but to maintain prestige. Corporations flaunt hollow ethics to boost their image while quietly exploiting workers. Even movements that claim moral high ground can become more obsessed with optics than with genuine justice. Your primal wiring is mirrored on every level, from your personal choices to global systems. But perhaps the most unsettling part is how your brain punishes you when you resist this drive. Choosing principle over popularity triggers fear of exclusion, of ridicule, of being cast out from the tribe. That fear isn't trivial. To your ancient mind, losing status meant literal death. You needed the group for protection, for food, for survival. That same archaic terror still lives inside you, pushing you to compromise ethics to keep your place in the social hierarchy. So next time you feel the warm glow of recognition, the rush of being admired, pause and question what you traded for it. Did you stay silent when you should have spoken? Did you betray a small truth, step over someone else's dignity, ignore a wrong just to keep your place? Your brain won't volunteer these answers easily. It's too busy celebrating the win. And yet, recognizing this tug-of-war inside you is the first step to reclaiming your integrity. Because when you see how easily your primal brain can warp your morals for the illusion of status, you can start choosing differently. Not always, maybe not even often, but sometimes. And that's where true character lives. Not in the absence of temptation, but in the fragile, imperfect moments you resist it. Speaking of fragile moments, have you ever wondered how your brain might also be completely misreading your own feelings, and even twisting how you interpret everyone else's? That's where we're going next. Have you ever wondered if your brain actually knows what it's feeling, or what anyone else is feeling? You'd like to think so. You'd like to believe there's this neat, flawless system inside your head that reads emotional signals like a scanner at a grocery store. But in reality, your brain is clumsy, biased, and startlingly bad at both understanding your own emotions and interpreting others. Imagine walking into a room where two people suddenly go quiet. You feel that sharp twinge in your gut, a whisper that says they were just talking about you. Your heart picks up. Your thoughts swirl with suspicion or embarrassment. But maybe they weren't talking about you at all. Maybe they were planning a surprise or sharing something private that had nothing to do with you. Your brain didn't detect the truth. It constructed a story because that's what it does. It's a meaning-making machine, desperate to impose patterns even when there are none. Now think about your own emotions. How many times have you felt angry, only to realize hours later that it was really fear or shame wearing anger's mask? Or told yourself you were fine when you were actually simmering with hurt, resentment, or grief? Your brain doesn't give you a clean printout of your emotional state. It hands you a sloppy first draft full of errors, assumptions, and missing pieces. Why? Because emotions aren't static signals waiting to be discovered. They're dynamic, constructed on the fly by your brain trying to predict what's going on inside your body and what's likely happening in the world. If your heart is racing, your stomach churning, your brain has to decide, are you excited, terrified, guilty? It guesses, using memories, context, and past patterns. And like any guess, it can be spectacularly wrong. This is even trickier when reading other people. You think a furrowed brow means anger, a downturned mouth means sadness. But facial expressions are wildly ambiguous. That angry look might be concentration. That sad voice might be fatigue. Yet your brain locks onto a single interpretation, often guided by your own biases, fears, or desires. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing, then insisting you see the whole picture. Even worse, your brain's predictions can become self-fulfilling. If you decide someone is annoyed with you, you might act defensive, cold, or anxious. They pick up on your energy and respond in kind, confirming your suspicion. But it wasn't true until your brain made it true. This flawed emotional reading system is also why arguments can spiral. You think you're calmly explaining yourself, but your partner sees tightened shoulders and hears a clipped tone. They read anger where you feel hurt. So they react with defensiveness or irritation, which you interpret as confirmation that they don't care. Round and round it goes, a carousel of mutual misinterpretation. Even your own memories of emotion betray you. Look back on a painful breakup or a humiliating moment years ago. You feel certain you remember exactly how devastated you were. But research shows your brain often reconstructs emotional memories, exaggerating or dulling them to fit the story it prefers. Your present self edits your past feelings to justify your current beliefs. And that's the sinister part. Your brain's errors aren't random. They're shaped by survival instincts carved out over thousands of years. Misreading fear as anger might have kept your ancestors alive by making them more cautious. Misreading someone's mild disappointment as deep rejection might prompt you to cling harder to social bonds. In other words, these mistakes aren't bugs, they're features that once protected you, even if they wreak havoc now. So what does this mean? It means your feelings about how someone else feels aren't facts. It means your own emotional self-understanding is built on shaky ground, and that's uncomfortable because it strips away certainty. It forces you to question whether your reactions are based on truth or on a story your brain hastily patched together. But there's also power here. Knowing your brain misreads can open the door to patience, curiosity, and a kind of humble caution. Before snapping at a friend for being distant, you might pause and wonder if it's really about them, or if your brain is just telling tales. Before declaring that you're fine, you might dig a little deeper to see what's really bubbling beneath the surface. Because your brain's guesses don't have to be your prison. You can learn to interrogate them, to look closer, to ask better questions, to give yourself and others a little more grace in this chaotic mess of human emotion. And maybe that's crucial, because up next we'll explore something even stranger, how your brain doesn't just misread feelings, it actively pushes you toward dangerous extremes, glorifying risk just to prove you're strong enough to survive. Why does your brain light up when you stand on the edge of danger? Why does it whisper that jumping might be exhilarating, that taking the risk could prove something essential about who you are? It's not because you're reckless. It's because deep inside your skull, an ancient machine is still trying to survive in a world that no longer exists. This primal circuitry evolved to value boldness, to glorify risky behavior as a kind of living testament to your strength. In the ancestral wild, danger was everywhere. Those who hesitated too long often died, while those who took decisive, gutsy action sometimes walked away with more food, more territory, more mates. The brain learned to reward risk because, once upon a time, it meant power and survival. Now fast forward to this sanitized, rule-bound society you inhabit. No saber-tooths lurking behind bushes, no rival tribes ambushing you at dawn. Yet your brain hasn't caught up. It still equates bold, dangerous acts with capability and dominance. So when you find yourself weaving through traffic at absurd speeds, flirting with disaster just to feel alive, or taking financial gambles that could wipe you out, it's often this deep-rooted drive at work. It wants to prove to yourself and to anyone watching that you're strong enough to face down death and win. Your brain floods you with dopamine when you take these chances. It dangles the promise of pride, respect, even love. In the Stone Age, this might have secured your position in the group, drawn admirers, scared off rivals. Today, it just as often earns you a hospital bill or a self-inflicted disaster. But the chemistry hasn't changed. The thrill of risk is still packaged as undeniable proof of your vitality. And it gets darker, because the people around you pick up on this ancient programming too. They're often more impressed by stories of wild, dangerous feats than careful, quiet successes. Think of how easily society idolizes daredevils, rebels, and high-stakes gamblers. It's your primal audience, unconsciously enthralled by the same signals your brain tries to send. Your risky behavior becomes a kind of social advertisement. Look how fearless I am. Look how I dance with ruin and come out laughing. The problem is, your modern environment punishes these instincts far more often than it rewards them. Take massive financial risks, and you could lose everything you've built. Chase the thrill of confrontation, and you might end up alone or even dead. But your brain still hasn't adapted. It glorifies the high-wire act because for millennia, those who pulled it off were heroes. It believes showing strength under threat is worth almost any cost. It doesn't grasp that your threats today are more psychological than physical, that the predator at the door is likely a debt collector or a legal summons, not a hungry beast. What makes this even more sinister is how effortlessly your brain rewrites failures to keep the narrative intact. When risk pays off, it cements the story: you're strong, you're superior. When it doesn't, your mind rushes to find excuses, bad luck, unfair circumstances, anything to preserve the underlying belief that taking the risk was the right move. It worships the risk itself, not the outcome. This is why entire industries, from gambling to extreme sports to stock trading, flourish by exploiting your mind's ancient need to prove itself through danger. But here's the catch: proving your strength this way is often just proving your brain hasn't evolved. It's demonstrating your vulnerability to instincts that no longer serve you. And the more you indulge them, the deeper the groove becomes. The neural pathways that light up at risk become easier to trigger, pulling you again and again toward reckless validation. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt that undeniable pull towards something dangerous, not because it was smart, not because it was needed, but because some hidden part of you wanted to prove you were brave enough, tough enough, daring enough? That's the echo of your ancestors, living inside your skull, whispering that strength is nothing if it's never tested. But what if the real strength today is something your primal brain can't comprehend? What if it's measured not by how close you stand to the ledge, but how wisely you step back, how carefully you build, how steadily you protect what matters, even when your instincts beg for the thrill of destruction? That's a new kind of courage, one your old wiring still struggles to recognize. And speaking of struggles, have you ever wondered why your brain is so quick to magnify your failures, but barely acknowledges your successes? Wait until you see just how unfair that wiring truly is. Have you ever noticed how your mind seems to keep a meticulous record of every mistake, every embarrassment, every outright failure, yet conveniently glosses over your victories as if they were accidents? Picture this. You try something new, a project, a relationship, a risky idea, and it collapses. Your brain doesn't just file that under "oops," it turns it into a neon sign, blinking endlessly, a warning etched into your neural pathways. Never try this again. It generalizes your failures, turning them from isolated incidents into global truths about who you are. Fail a presentation, and suddenly you're not just bad at public speaking, you're incompetent. Get rejected once, and you're unlovable. Make a financial mistake, and you're irresponsible forever. The mind latches onto failures like burrs on fabric. It multiplies them, extends them, draws dark lines between unrelated events until it weaves a narrative that's hard to escape, that you are fundamentally flawed. Now think about your successes. When was the last time you truly let yourself absorb them? To bask in a triumph, to replay it, to let it become a part of your identity. Chances are, your brain dismissed it quickly. It filed it under luck or downplayed it as something anyone could have done. While your failures are billboards, your successes are whispers, gone before they've even settled. Why does your mind do this? Evolution offers one clue. Our ancestors survived by anticipating threats, by remembering every mistake that could have gotten them killed. Miss a rustle in the bushes that turns out to be a predator, and you die. Overreact to harmless shadows. You live another day, so your brain developed a bias. Better to remember the dangers, the failures, the moments of pain, because they might save you next time. But in the modern world, that wiring screws you over. Most failures now aren't life or death. They're social, financial, or personal setbacks. Yet, your mind treats them with the same gravity as a near mauling by a saber-toothed cat. It engraves your mistakes deeply, building a blueprint of avoidance. Meanwhile, your successes, often crucial to self-confidence, slip away, unanchored, barely noticed. It gets worse. Your brain starts to predict future failures based on this warped history. It doesn't just sting in the moment. It festers, colors your sense of worth, primes you to see yourself as someone destined to underachieve. The next opportunity comes, and self-doubt strangles it before it starts. Because your mind says, "Remember last time, don't risk it." It's a brutal feedback loop. Past failures build expectations of future ones, which then shape your behavior, increasing the chances of, guess what, more failure. This is why generalizing failures is so dangerous. It turns learning experiences into identity statements. Instead of thinking, "I failed at this specific task," your mind whispers, "I fail. That's who I am." And once you internalize that, you begin living in accordance with it. You avoid challenges, sidestep opportunities, shrink your ambitions. You protect yourself from repeating past pain, but you also cut yourself off from growth. Now imagine if your brain treated successes the same way it treats failures. Imagine it replaying every compliment, every victory, every hard-won achievement, letting them pile up into a mountain of self-assurance. You'd walk differently, speak differently, you'd dare more. Your identity would swell, not around your defeats, but around your capabilities. Yet your primal brain doesn't work that way on its own. It needs deliberate effort, conscious repetition, savoring wins, rewriting the story. So start questioning the stories your mind feeds you. Start noticing when a single setback mutates into a sweeping judgment of your worth. Interrupt it. Say, no, that was one event. It doesn't define me. Just as importantly, linger on your successes. Replay them. Let them carve new grooves into your mind. Because if your brain insists on generalizing, you might as well teach it to generalize your victories. And maybe you'll begin to see that your failures were never about who you are, only about where you were at one fragile point in time. But what happens when your mind, having already twisted your failures into a personality, clings just as tightly to outdated beliefs that no longer serve you? That's where things get even trickier. Picture this. Your brain is like an old library, filled with dusty volumes of beliefs. Beliefs you formed years ago, maybe even decades ago, about who you are, how the world works, and what to expect from life. Now imagine that most of these books have never been updated. Some of the pages are yellowed, the ink fading, the stories inside hopelessly outdated. But here's the kicker. Your brain guards these stories fiercely. It clings to them, defending them, as if your very survival depends on it. Because, in a way, it believes it does. This stubborn loyalty to old beliefs isn't a harmless quirk, it's a deep-seated survival mechanism, rooted in the same primal instincts that once helped your ancestors navigate threats in the wild. Back then, if you figured out which berries were poisonous or which rustle in the bushes meant danger, your brain locked that knowledge in tight. Rewriting those lessons could mean death. Certainty kept you alive. But fast forward to today, and those same mental instincts play out in ways that sabotage you. You might still be holding on to the belief that you're unlovable because of how a parent treated you, or that you're destined to fail because of something a teacher once said. You accept these ideas not because they're true, but because they're familiar. Familiar feels safe. Your brain would rather recycle an old belief, even a painful one, than face the uncertainty of a new perspective. This is why trying to change your mind feels like pulling teeth. When confronted with evidence that contradicts what you believe, say a compliment when you secretly think you're worthless, your brain doesn't calmly update itself. Instead, it fights back. It dismisses the evidence, finds reasons to doubt it, twists it until it fits your existing narrative. You become a master at confirmation bias, unconsciously seeking out proof that your outdated beliefs are still right, still valid, still essential to who you are. It's not just personal stories either. Look at how this plays out across entire societies. Cultural myths get passed down like family heirlooms. Hard work always pays off. Justice is blind. Good things come to those who wait, even when mountains of evidence suggest these ideas are painfully incomplete. People cling to them. Why? Because rewriting them means admitting uncertainty, facing complexity, acknowledging a reality where comforting promises aren't guaranteed. That's terrifying. So the brain doubles down. And then there's identity, perhaps the most stubborn fortress of all. The beliefs you hold about yourself are like the bricks that make up your internal house. Try to pull one out, and the whole structure feels like it might collapse. Better to live in a cracked, crooked house than risk no house at all. So you hold on. You tell yourself stories like, "I'm just not creative," or "I'm bad with money," because even negative certainty feels safer than the chaos of change. Notice how this mental rigidity shows up in little things too. You buy the same brand of cereal, follow the same route to work, argue the same political opinions year after year. Each choice reinforces the comfort of familiarity. Your brain rewards this with tiny hits of dopamine, soothing you with the feeling that all is predictable, all is stable. But here's the uncomfortable truth: those outdated beliefs, those old stories you guard so fiercely, they're costing you. They keep you locked in patterns that no longer serve you, blind to possibilities that could change everything. They whisper limits into your ear, convincing you to settle, to shrink, to repeat the past because it's easier than imagining something new. And the cruel irony: the world you live in now isn't the world those beliefs were built for. The threats you face today aren't saber-toothed tigers, they're more subtle, more psychological. A missed opportunity, a stifled dream, a love you're too afraid to chase. Yet your brain still acts like letting go of an old belief might kill you. It won't. In fact, challenging these beliefs might be the only thing that saves you from living a life that's far too small. But your brain doesn't care about happiness. It cares about safety, and safety means clinging, clutching, gripping those outdated ideas for dear life. So the next time you feel yourself resisting change, defending a belief you've never truly examined, pause and ask, is this really protecting me? Or is it just my brain's ancient wiring, doing what it's always done, trading growth for the illusion of security? And speaking of illusions, have you ever wondered why your brain can't tell the difference between the gnaw of anxiety and the growl of real danger? Picture this: your heart is racing, your palms are damp, and your breath feels shallow. Maybe it's because you're about to give a presentation. Maybe you just heard a strange noise outside your window. Or maybe it's nothing at all, no threat, no danger, just your mind conjuring shadows in the dark. Your body doesn't know the difference. It can't tell if the predator is real or imagined, because to your primal brain, anxiety feels exactly like danger. Thousands of years ago, this confusion was a matter of survival. Your ancestors couldn't afford to carefully analyze every rustle in the bushes. Was it the wind, or was it a predator waiting to pounce? The brain evolved to err on the side of caution, to flood your body with adrenaline at the slightest hint of threat. Better to be jumpy and alive than calm and dead. Anxiety was your life insurance policy, a way to keep you hyper-vigilant in a world where mistakes meant death. But now, you live surrounded by locked doors, grocery stores, climate control, and emergency services, a phone call away. The lion in the tall grass has been replaced by email notifications and ambiguous social interactions. Yet your brain still reacts as if it's under siege. It still launches the same ancient alarm system, pumping cortisol through your veins, priming you to fight, flee, or freeze. All over a rude text message or a critical glance. This is where things get messy. Your body can't distinguish between a life-threatening situation and a stressful but harmless one. It ramps up your heartbeat, tightens your chest, and makes your thoughts spiral, all because your boss raised an eyebrow or someone didn't text back. Your ancient biology is catastrophically out of sync with your modern environment. Anxiety is supposed to protect you from real danger, but more often, it just drags you into a private hell of imagined catastrophes. Think of how easily your mind paints horror stories. You send a message, see no reply, and suddenly your brain invents an entire movie. They hate you, you've ruined everything, disaster is inevitable. Your heart races as if that disaster were happening right now. Your muscles tense as if bracing for impact. It's not just in your head, your body genuinely believes it's under threat. And so you suffer the pain of dangers that don't exist. Even worse, your brain starts looking for more threats to justify the alarm. It scans your environment, your memories, your social circles, hunting for anything that might explain why you feel so uneasy. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Anxiety, searching for danger, inevitably finds reasons to stay anxious. Your ancient hardware isn't just faulty, it's a master of false alarms. This is why anxiety can feel so real, so physical, so convincing. It's not merely thoughts, it's an entire biological cascade designed to keep you alive in a world that's long gone. Your brain whispers something is wrong, and your body answers with a resounding prepare for battle. Even when there is no enemy, no cliff to tumble from, no claws reaching out of the dark. And here's the cruel part, because it feels so urgent. You trust it. You assume this pounding heart means there must be danger, that these racing thoughts must be telling the truth. But your brain is tricking you. It's dragging an ancient survival mechanism into places it simply doesn't belong. Social embarrassment isn't mortal peril. Awkward conversations won't lead to death. Yet your nervous system treats them with the same raw, blind panic. This confusion between anxiety and real danger is why people avoid, retreat, shrink their lives. It's why someone might turn down an incredible opportunity or avoid meaningful connections. Because their body is screaming, this is dangerous, even when it's just uncomfortable. Your primal brain is built to keep you alive, not to make you happy, not to help you grow, not to let you take risks that could transform your life. Recognizing this doesn't magically stop the anxiety, but it does give you a crucial edge, the power to question the signal, to pause and ask, is this truly dangerous, or is my brain simply confused? It's the first step in reclaiming your life from instincts that don't serve you anymore. Because most of what terrifies you isn't a threat, it's just echoes of a world your brain still believes you live in. And if you think this confusion is bad, wait until you see how your brain paralyzes action altogether, freezing you with the fear of making even the smallest mistakes. Why do you hesitate again and again, even when the path forward seems clear? Your brain, so proud of its planning and problem solving, has a hidden flaw. It's terrified of mistakes. It overpauses action, second guesses instinct, and builds walls of hesitation, all to avoid the sting of being wrong. At first glance, that might sound wise. Caution protects you, right? But think about how many chances slip by while your mind replays every possible consequence like a broken film reel. How many conversations die on your tongue? How many opportunities fade into the background simply because your brain would rather stall than risk embarrassment or regret? This overpausing isn't about deep moral calculus or thoughtful patience. It's about fear masquerading as prudence. Your mind magnifies potential failures, imagining outcomes so vividly they feel real. Before you've even moved, you're already bracing for shame, disappointment, or ridicule. That anticipation keeps you frozen. It's a survival mechanism run amok, treating minor social slip-ups or small setbacks with the same gravity as mortal danger. Picture a prehistoric human standing at the edge of a dark forest. Hesitation made sense. Then one wrong move could mean becoming dinner for something with sharper teeth. But now, your modern threats are usually psychological, not physical. Still, your brain can't tell the difference. A risk to your ego lights up the same primal alarms. So you stand still, paralyzed by the ghost of a consequence that probably won't even arrive. This is why you overthink sending that message, starting that project, or sharing your opinion in a meeting. Your brain hits the brakes, rehashing every scenario in painful detail, whispering, "Are you sure you want to do this? What if it goes wrong?" The cruel irony is that this constant caution doesn't actually make your decisions better. It just delays them until the moment passes, unclaimed. And it's not just big life choices, it's the little ones that accumulate, like grains of sand, slowly burying your sense of agency. Each time you pause unnecessarily, you reinforce a loop. Hesitation leads to relief when danger doesn't strike, which teaches your brain to hesitate again. Over time, you start to mistake inaction for safety, and your world quietly contracts. The real tragedy is that most mistakes aren't fatal. They're awkward, maybe a little painful, but deeply human and almost always survivable. Yet your brain treats them like cliffs. It overprotects, holding you hostage to imaginary disasters, padding your life so thoroughly against error that you end up wrapped in a cocoon of missed chances. Meanwhile, watch how quickly your mind will justify this. It tells you that pausing means you're wise, that not acting spares you harm. It points to the one-time hesitation saved you from embarrassment, ignoring the dozens of other times it merely stole your chance to grow. Your brain loves being right, even if it means keeping you small. So what would happen if you moved anyway? If you felt the fear, noticed the 1,000 reasons to pause, and acted regardless? You might make mistakes. Yes, you might even regret them. But more often, you discover that the consequences your brain fears aren't nearly as catastrophic as promised. Each small act of courage chips away at the tyranny of hesitation, proving to yourself that life's messy risks are not only tolerable but essential. Because in the end, your brain's obsession with error is less about protecting you from pain and more about protecting itself from uncertainty. It craves predictability, even if that means shrinking your life to fit its cautious narrative. But you were not built merely to avoid mistakes. You were built to explore, to stumble, to learn, to live beyond the edges of comfort. And as your mind calms, you might notice something else, how silence itself starts to gnaw at you in unexpected ways. Because your brain doesn't just fear mistakes. Sometimes it turns the absence of noise into a new kind of threat. Have you ever noticed how silence makes your skin crawl? Not the pleasant hush of a peaceful morning, but that eerie, suffocating quiet that seems to press against your chest. Your brain hates it. It treats silence like a rustling in the dark, an untraceable threat. You might think stillness should calm you, but in reality, your primal wiring interprets it as a signal that something is wrong, that something is watching, or worse, waiting. Your ancestors survived by paying attention to noise. The crack of a branch meant prey or predator. The chatter of the group meant safety in numbers. Silence, however, meant uncertainty. It meant something in the environment had changed. Perhaps something dangerous was near, forcing every creature to go still and listen. In that hush, your brain ramped up its vigilance, flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Because if the forest goes silent, maybe a predator is stalking close by. Maybe you're next. Even today, in your modern home, far from prowling beasts, that same instinct festers beneath your rational thoughts. Ever notice how an awkward silence during a conversation feels almost physically painful? Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, and you scramble for words just to fill the void. It's not merely social discomfort, it's your ancient brain interpreting a lack of social noise as a break in the tribe's rhythm, a potential rejection from the group. And to your primal mind, social exile wasn't embarrassment, it was death. Consider how often you reach for your phone when the world goes quiet. A moment without input is intolerable. You fill silence with music, videos, chatter, anything to keep the hum of life going. Because deep down, silence is interpreted as a sign that your environment is unpredictable, untrustworthy, or that you've been left alone. In that vacuum, your brain rushes to create threats where none exist. It imagines worst-case scenarios, replays old anxieties, conjures dangers to keep you alert. Because staying alert once meant staying alive. There's another twist. Your brain isn't just on the lookout for external threats in silence. It also turns inward, dragging up unresolved fears. In the absence of external noise, your thoughts grow loud, unfiltered, often dark. That's why people dread sitting alone in a quiet room with nothing but their own mind. Silence becomes a breeding ground for self-doubt, old regrets, and imagined dangers. It's why some would rather face constant distraction than risk hearing what lurks beneath their conscious awareness. This is precisely why marketers, tech platforms, and even urban planners exploit your fear of silence. Stores pump in background music. Restaurants fill air with clatter. The beds bombard you with notifications, each ping a reassurance that you're not alone, that there's no eerie quiet to remind you of ancient vulnerabilities. The noise comforts you. It deceives your primal brain into believing everything's okay, even if, objectively, it's not. But ironically, your intolerance for silence also keeps you trapped in a cycle of stress. Because constant noise doesn't allow your mind to process and discharge tension. The result? A restless, anxious undercurrent that never quite resolves because you never let silence finish its work. You never give yourself a chance to confront what your mind is actually afraid of. Your brain's distrust of silence is an old evolutionary habit, one that rarely serves you anymore. There are no predators hiding behind your living room couch. Yet the same circuitry fires, flooding you with unease over an empty room or a pause in conversation. It's a glitch, a relic, but it shapes your life in countless ways, fueling social anxiety, compulsive distraction, even insomnia, as your in invents threats to fill the quiet of the night. So the next time you find yourself desperately reaching for a distraction, at the first sign of silence, pause, feel the discomfort. Recognize it for what it is, an echo of an ancient alarm system, misfiring in a world where the silence you fear holds no real threat. Only then can you start to reclaim stillness and perhaps discover that in the quiet, once so terrifying, there might actually be peace. But your brain isn't done betraying you just yet. Because when silence leaves gaps, it also fills them with something else. And that's a whole new trick it loves to play on you. Why do you think your brain fills in gaps in information? You might assume it's simply to make sense of the world, to keep the story straight. But the unsettling truth is that your brain doesn't just fill in gaps, it fills them in with bias. It doesn't care about accuracy nearly as much as it cares about narrative, cohesion, and preserving your fragile sense of certainty. Imagine walking through your house at night and seeing a shadow dart across the hallway. Your heart races, your mind instantly crafts a story, an intruder, a ghost, something sinister lurking just out of sight. Rarely do you pause to consider that it might be your coat swaying or a trick of the light. Your brain isn't patiently waiting for more evidence. It's leaping to conclusions, eager to close the gap with whatever explanation feels most compelling. This isn't some rare glitch. It's how your mind is wired. Because partial information is uncomfortable. It breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like danger. Thousands of years ago, on the savannah, if you heard rustling in the bushes and assumed it was nothing, you might have ended up dead. Better to assume the worst, to bias your perception toward threat, to imagine claws and teeth instead of harmless wind. That evolutionary shortcut might have saved your ancestors, but today it means your brain is constantly inserting bias into blank spaces where truth could exist. Consider how you remember arguments. You probably don't recall exact words or specific sequences. Instead, your brain reconstructs the memory in a way that often paints you in a slightly better light. It smooths over your mistakes, exaggerates the flaws of the other person, all to maintain your self-image. You aren't maliciously lying, your brain is doing it for you, automatically, beneath the level of conscious awareness. You walk away, believing a slightly edited version of events, blissfully unaware that key details were fabricated by your own mind. Or think about people. You meet someone for the first time and pick up on a couple of cues, a stiff handshake, an awkward laugh, and instantly your mind starts writing a story. They must be insecure, maybe arrogant, maybe hiding something. With almost no real evidence, your brain rushes to fill in the blanks. It's astonishing how quickly a few scattered data points become a full character sketch. Once that bias story is in place, every new piece of information gets twisted to fit. If they do something kind, your mind might shrug it off as manipulation. If they slip up, it's confirmation of your earlier suspicion. You're not seeing them as they are, you're seeing them as your brain decided they must be. This mental filling in happens everywhere. It's why conspiracy theories thrive. Someone sees a few ambiguous facts strung loosely together, and instead of sitting with ambiguity, their mind stitches them into a dramatic, emotionally satisfying narrative. The less information, ironically, the easier it is for bias to flood in and take control. The same thing happens with rumors. A tiny spark of uncertainty gets fanned into a blazing story because your mind would rather believe something, even something distorted, than admit it doesn't know. But it's not just about protecting you from fear or bolstering your ego. It's also about efficiency. Your brain wants quick decisions, clear categories, so it takes partial data and finishes the picture, like a lazy artist connecting dots in the simplest way possible. Complexity is energy intensive. Certainty, even false certainty, is cheap. Realize how vulnerable this makes you. Every day, you're not responding purely to reality. You're reacting to stories your brain invents, narratives soaked in bias, crafted to comfort, protect, or simplify. That means you might mistrust people who deserve your openness, misjudge situations that require patience, or hold beliefs built on nothing more than cognitive filler. The worst part? You'll feel absolutely sure you're right. So what can you do? You can start by catching yourself in the act. Notice when your mind races to complete an incomplete picture. Sit with the discomfort of not knowing. Challenge yourself to seek more evidence, to let ambiguity exist without resolving it instantly into bias. The less you allow your mind to autopilot through uncertainty, the more honest your perception becomes. Because your brain gaps incomplete info with bias, leaving you certain of things that might not be true at all. And that very certainty is what paves the way for the next trap your primal mind sets. How it instinctively craves the most dramatic stories, even when the truth is far less sensational. Have you ever wondered why your mind lights up, When the news flashes a story about a gruesome murder halfway across the globe, but barely flickers when someone calmly explains the latest breakthroughs in heart disease prevention. It's not just about shock value, it's about how your brain has been wired over thousands of years to latch onto the dramatic, the dangerous, and the disastrous. It craves urgency over accuracy, sensation over subtlety, and that's a bias you carry with you every single day. Picture your ancient ancestors clustered around a fire. The world outside that circle was dark, filled with predators, rival tribes, and countless threats that could end a life in an instant. When someone burst into the clearing, breathless and terrified, warning that a panther had been spotted nearby, your ancestors didn't demand evidence or ask for multiple credible sources. They reacted. They needed to. Their survival depended on treating dramatic warnings as gospel. Fast forward to now, and your brain hasn't evolved nearly as much as you'd like to think. The same hardware that kept your ancestors alive now sits inside your skull, hungry for cues of danger. It loves drama because drama once meant information critical to your survival. That's why your attention zeroes in on the tragic, the violent, the catastrophic, even when these events have absolutely no bearing on your actual safety. Your brain doesn't care that statistics say violent crime has been dropping for decades. It doesn't care that most of what makes headlines is statistically improbable. It cares about the vividness, the raw, emotional punch of the story. The more extreme, the more your mind fixates on it. This is why a plane crash will haunt you far more than the thought of heart disease, even though the latter is exponentially more likely to kill you. The rare, the shocking, the bloody, these override logical assessments of risk. Media companies know this. They don't craft headlines for the rational mind. They aim straight for that primal lizard brain that's still scanning the savannah for panthers. A story about global cooperation quietly reducing poverty. It gets buried. But a story about a gruesome killing spree or a freak accident that soars to the top because your biology can't help but look. Even more insidious is how your brain then rearranges its sense of reality based on this steady diet of fear and spectacle. The more you consume dramatic news, the more your mind starts to believe the world is a dangerous, chaotic place where horror lurks around every corner. It's not an abstract psychological quirk. It's a direct manipulation of your perception. You begin to expect the dramatic, you brace for it, and in doing so, you prime yourself to live in a state of low-level anxiety. This also means you start ignoring truths that could actually make your life better, because calm, nuanced, complicated truths don't trigger the same chemical fireworks in your brain. You'll skip over articles about local policy changes that affect your healthcare, or about how consistent sleep might prevent chronic disease, because these stories lack the adrenaline hit. They don't feel urgent, even though they are. Your mind was built to prioritize the immediate roar of the tiger, not the slow, quiet clogging of arteries. Worse yet, your bias for the dramatic is self-reinforcing. The more you feed it, the more it grows. Your brain releases dopamine each time it dives into a sensational story, rewarding the behavior, urging you to seek out more of the same. You become a willing participant in your own distortion of reality, drawn to what startles, even if it's a lie, even if it warps your view of the world into something darker than it really is. This isn't just about being manipulated by external forces. It's about understanding that inside your own head is a machine that prioritizes spectacle over substance, instinctively drawn to narratives that mirror ancestral threats rather than modern truths. Recognizing this means you can start to fight it, deliberately seeking balance, forcing yourself to pay attention to what's calm, what's constructive, what actually matters. Because if you don't, your mind will keep dragging you by the hand toward every mental fire alarm it finds, whether or not there's any real smoke. It'll keep convincing you the world is teetering on the edge of collapse, even on your most peaceful day. And speaking of your mind's twisted instincts, wait until you see how it craves a sense of certainty it can never actually have. Have you ever wondered why your brain latches onto certainty like a lifeline, even when deep down you know that certainty is a fantasy? It's strange, isn't it? This unspoken desperation to pin reality down, to wrap your hands around something solid and unchanging, even though everything in life is in constant motion. Your mind is wired to crave stability, predictable outcomes, reliable patterns, familiar rules, because unpredictability. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, with the ground crumbling beneath your feet. Your brain would rather clutch a comforting lie than sit in the unsettling fog of not knowing. It feeds on conclusions, any conclusions, just to soothe the gnawing discomfort of ambiguity. Think about how quickly you form judgments about people. In a matter of seconds, you decide if someone is trustworthy, dangerous, competent, or foolish. Your brain locks these snap assessments into place because lingering uncertainty feels like vulnerability, like danger. But how many times have those quick judgments turned out to be wrong? How many opportunities, connections, or simple truths have been lost because your mind needed the illusion of certainty more than it wanted the truth? Consider how conspiracy theories take root. Each ain't true, but self-conspiracy theories take root. They flourish not because people are stupid, but because their brains are starving for explanations. When the world feels chaotic, cruel, and impossibly complex, a neat, even sinister story offers something seductive. A shadowy cabal pulling the strings is easier to process than 1,000 unrelated forces colliding in unpredictable ways. Complexity gets flattened into simple narratives because your mind recoils from admitting it can't fully understand the tangled machinery of reality. The same hunger for certainty infects your personal life. Have you ever stayed in a bad relationship just because leaving meant facing an unknown future? Have you ever clung to a job you despised because at least it was familiar? Your brain dreads the blank canvas of uncertainty. It would rather fill it with something ugly than risk staring into the terrifying emptiness of possibility. This is why people stay stuck. Certainty, even painful certainty, feels safer than the ambiguous unknown. Look at how you plan your future. You map out careers, relationships, finances, tiny blueprints for a life you want to believe is under your control. And sure, planning isn't inherently bad. But the illusion that you can lock reality into a neat script, that's where your brain plays its cruelest trick. Because when life inevitably veers off course, when people betray you, when health fails, when the world turns upside down, your brain spirals. It was never built to gracefully accept that control is at best partial and fleeting. Worse still, your brain confuses certainty with safety. It doesn't just want to know, it wants to know so it can protect you. This is an ancient survival mechanism. Predict the rustle in the bushes is a predator. You live, assume the same pattern of clouds means rain. You survive. But in the modern world, this wiring leads you to obsess over threats that may never come, to overanalyze text messages, to catastrophize minor setbacks. You spin stories of betrayal and failure, not because they're likely, but because your brain thinks preparing for certainty, even a dark certainty, is better than being caught off guard. Ironically, this desperate grasping for certainty often leaves you more fragile. When your rigid expectations shatter, so do you. You aren't practiced in flexibility, in adapting, in flowing with life's unpredictable currents. You've built mental castles on foundations of sand, and when the tide inevitably comes in, you're left drowning in confusion and fear. So here's a question that might haunt you. What would it look like to make peace with uncertainty? To accept that your brain's craving for clear answers is a leftover survival tool that doesn't always serve you. It doesn't mean giving up on planning or caring. It means recognizing that the ground beneath you has always been shifting, that certainty was never promised. The real strength lies in standing tall anyway, eyes wide open to the unknown, heart steady even when clarity never comes. Because maybe life isn't about hunting for absolute truths or flawless plans. Maybe it's about dancing with uncertainty, learning to stay curious where your brain wants to slam the door shut. Maybe peace isn't found in knowing, but in realizing you don't have to know, and you can still be okay. And speaking of what your brain does to keep itself comfortable, have you ever wondered why pain somehow makes things feel more valuable, more real, more meaningful? Have you ever noticed how your brain seems to glorify suffering? Not in some poetic, tragic sense, but in the quiet, everyday way it assigns worth. If something hurts, if it costs you sleep, tears, or sanity, your mind tags it as meaningful. It files pain under proof of value, as if agony itself is a receipt confirming you paid enough to deserve what you got. Why is it that a grueling work project feels more legitimate than an effortless success? That staying in a toxic relationship seems more noble than leaving for your own sanity? Because your primal wiring equates sacrifice with significance. The more it costs, the more it must be worth. Your brain latches onto pain like a price tag. If it hurt, if you suffered, then surely it mattered. Think back to the stories you've been fed since childhood. The heroes endure unbearable trials. The lovers claw through heartbreak. The winners bleed, sweat, and weep before they stand victorious. Suffering is embedded into every tale of triumph, conditioning you to equate hardship with merit. Without the pain, does the outcome even count? Your brain whispers, probably not. But this isn't just cultural storytelling. It's biological. Pain carves deep grooves into your memory. 1,000 pleasant moments slip away. But the time you embarrassed yourself in front of a crowd, or the night you sobbed alone, those live forever. Pain demands attention, teaches lessons, brands your mind with urgency. So it becomes a twisted shorthand for importance. If it hurt, it must have mattered. If you struggled, you must have earned it. This is why people brag about being overworked, underslept, emotionally battered by their goals. It's why I barely survived that becomes a badge of honor. Your brain turns suffering into a moral receipt. You didn't just achieve, no, you paid in agony, and that makes the outcome righteous, undeniable, yours. It shows up everywhere. In relationships, how often do you hear someone proudly declare how much they've endured? As if the volume of pain directly translates to the depth of love. The longer you stayed despite misery, the more authentic the bond must be. The more you suffered, the more real it feels. You're told love is proven by pain, that sacrifice is its truest language. Meanwhile, healthy love, steady, calm, joyful, somehow feels suspiciously cheap. Even personal growth follows this warped logic. You believe that transformation must be brutal, that if you're not clawing your way out of some pit of despair, the change isn't profound. Your brain romanticizes the suffering. You look at your scars and think, "See, I earned this peace," as though peace itself must be purchased with blood. But this wiring has a sinister side, because once your mind starts using pain as a metric, it becomes easy to chase it, unconsciously seeking out hardship, just to feel like you're living a meaningful life. You stay in jobs that drain you, relationships that deplete you, habits that quietly torture you. You confuse suffering with significance. Without it, you worry your life might be hollow, your success is unearned. Think of how the culture amplifies this instinct. No pain, no gain. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Suffer now so you can shine later. It's an endless loop reinforcing that. If you're comfortable, you're probably failing. That ease is suspect. That joy should be rationed, and guilt should accompany it, like an obligatory tax. But pause here. Who really benefits when your brain demands proof of value through pain? Employers squeezing unpaid overtime. Partners who never have to grow because you'll keep sacrificing. Systems that profit off your relentless hustle. A world that tells you to prove your worth by breaking yourself over and over just to validate your existence. Your brain uses pain as proof of value because for most of human history, survival did require suffering. Scarcity, predators, wars, endurance meant life. Those who didn't tolerate hardship didn't make it. But in the modern world, this instinct often betrays you. It tells you that ease is worthless, that joy without agony is counterfeit. It traps you in cycles of proving yourself through pain, long after the threats have vanished. So what if you stopped measuring value by how much something hurts? What if your peace didn't need justification? Imagine embracing a life where ease isn't suspicious, where comfort isn't evidence of laziness, but simply good. Would your brain even know how to process that? Or would it flinch, whispering that something must be wrong because nothing hurts? Hold that thought. Because the next question your primal mind will tackle is even stranger, how it manages to label strangers as threats or allies in the split second it takes you to blink. Picture this. You're walking down a busy street. Hundreds of faces pass by, some friendly, some stern, some nondescript. They barely register. But without even realizing it, your brain is making snap judgments about each one. In a fraction of a second, it's deciding who looks trustworthy, who seems dangerous, who might be competent or weak, who appears likable or suspicious. All of this happens before a single word is spoken. Your conscious mind lags miles behind. By the time you're aware of someone, your primal circuitry has already branded them. Why does this happen? Because deep inside your skull, your brain is still operating on ancient programming. Thousands of years ago, when a stranger appeared on the horizon, your survival depended on immediate assessments. Was this person a friend or a foe? Were they healthy or diseased? Could they be a potential ally, or did they pose a threat? Quick, instinctual judgments kept your ancestors alive long enough to become your ancestors. The brain that helped them navigate those dangers is the same brain perched atop your shoulders right now, just wildly out of sync with modern complexity. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and threat, lights up like a switchboard when you see unfamiliar faces. Studies show it reacts in under 1/10 of a second, faster than your rational mind can whisper. Relax, this is just someone buying coffee. Your ancient wiring is already scanning for danger. It's sizing up bone structure, eye contact, posture. It's deciding, without evidence, who's safe and who isn't. And it doesn't stop at safety. Your brain also makes unconscious judgments about competence and warmth from mere facial features. Someone with a strong jawline or high cheekbones, your brain tags them as more competent. A round face with big eyes, probably friendly, It's absurd. None of this reliably predicts character. But your brain doesn't care about accuracy. It cares about shortcuts. Efficiency over precision. Survival over fairness. This primal branding is relentless. Even a stranger's clothing can send your brain into classification overdrive. Uniforms, expensive suits, shabby jeans, each triggers a cascade of stereotypes, some so ingrained you wouldn't recognize them as biases. Your mind constructs tiny stories in an instant: who this person might be, what they value, how they'll behave, all on the basis of a glance. It's not always malicious. Often it's just mechanical, but that's precisely what makes it so insidious. Because once your brain brands someone, it filters everything else through that initial label. A stranger you tagged as trustworthy, you'll overlook small warning signs. Someone flagged as incompetent. You'll disregard clever ideas they share. This is why first impressions stick so stubbornly. Your brain's snap judgments aren't simply guesses, they're blueprints that shape your ongoing perceptions. And the worst part, you're not immune to branding either. Every person who glances your way is running the same lightning-fast calculations. They're deciding if you're worth approaching, avoiding, trusting, or dismissing before you even say hello. Your posture, your grooming, the micro-expressions flitting across your face, they're all data points feeding ancient algorithms in someone else's mind. Think about what this means. We navigate our entire social world guided by split-second branding, tags slapped onto strangers by neural circuits that evolved to judge quickly, not fairly. You might pride yourself on being open-minded, but your primal brain doesn't care. It was built to survive, not to be just. So it brands strangers without hesitation, often without mercy. Maybe you think this only matters in brief encounters. But these snap judgments lay the groundwork for bigger decisions. Who gets hired? Who gets alone? Who's believed in court? Who's invited in or kept out? Your primal brain brands people in a heartbeat, then builds rational-sounding stories to justify these gut reactions. We tell ourselves we're being objective, but often we're just explaining away ancient instincts. So next time you catch yourself instinctively liking or distrusting someone, pause. Consider that your brain may have already stamped them with a brand they never asked for. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's outdated, but it's powerful, strong enough to shape destinies. Because when your primal brain decides who someone is at a glance, it's not just guessing about them, it's quietly deciding how you'll treat them, what chances they'll get, and how their story might unfold. And if you think that's unsettling, just wait until you see how your brain ranks these same strangers by wealth and power, often before you've even realized there was a ranking to begin with. Picture yourself walking into a crowded room. Maybe it's a gala, a corporate event, or even a casual dinner party. Without realizing it, your brain instantly starts scanning, sorting, and ranking every single person there. It doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't wait for your conscious mind to weigh in. It just happens. Automatic, ruthless, primal. Your eyes dart from tailored suits to sparkling jewelry to confident posture. In milliseconds, your mind decides who is important, who deserves deference, who can be dismissed. You're not evaluating them on kindness, intelligence, or even honesty. No, your brain is overwhelmingly concerned with two things: wealth and power. It's disturbing, isn't it? To realize that beneath your cultivated values, beneath your belief in fairness, equality, and human dignity, lurks a raw instinct to judge worth by status. Think about how subtly this shows up. When a wealthy person speaks, others listen more attentively. When someone drops a casual mention of their powerful connections, heads turn, laughter comes quicker, smiles grow wider. Even your own posture shifts slightly. A small tilt of the head, an unconscious lean forward, all tiny signals that you value them more. Now imagine the flip side. The server who quietly refills glasses, the janitor you barely notice sweeping in the corner, the shy relative who struggles to afford the cab ride over. Do they get the same glow of attention? Do their stories sound just as compelling? Often without even realizing it, your brain has decided not worth as much, not important, less human, less real. You might want to deny this, insist that you're above it, that you see people for who they truly are. But research and brutally honest introspection suggests otherwise. Studies show we consistently attribute more positive traits to people who appear wealthy or influential. We assume they're smarter, more capable, even morally superior. Their flaws get excused, their failures reframed as momentary stumbles on a grand journey. Meanwhile, the exact same mistakes in someone poor or powerless are treated as evidence of deeper character flaws. This isn't just about luxury brands or grand mansions. It's about the subtle cues your brain devours: confidence, language, posture, the way someone navigates a room. Power leaks out of people's pores. Wealth shapes the tiniest details, from the way teeth are straightened to how voices are modulated. And your brain, ever hungry for hierarchy, latches onto these signals with frightening eagerness. Why does it work this way? Because your brain is an ancient machine designed for survival in small tribes where power and resource control meant everything. Aligning with the strong increased your odds of protection and prosperity. Displeasing them could spell doom. Those instincts didn't disappear just because we invented democracy or wrote stirring declarations about equality. They're still there, humming along in the background, shaping your preferences, your loyalties, your very perception of who matters. This explains why scandals barely dent the reputations of the wealthy or influential. Why politicians with vast fortunes or celebrities caught in controversies still command adoration. Your brain rationalizes for them, protects its own old programming. It wants to stay close to power. It needs to believe that aligning with the powerful is the smart, safe thing to do. So it rewrites reality just enough to preserve the hierarchy. Now extend this to your everyday life. Think of job interviews. Who gets the benefit of the doubt? Who seems more professional, more promising? Often, it's the person who signals status through clothing, grooming, confident speech. Your primal mind ranks them higher before you're even aware it's happening. Think about friendships or romantic attractions. How often does hidden calculus about someone's potential, their connections, their future earning power, sway your gut feelings? You might dress it up in noble language, telling yourself it's about ambition or shared values. But often, it's the quiet pull of wanting proximity to wealth and power, the unsettling part. This means you're not fully choosing the people you admire, love, or even deem worthy of basic respect. An ancient status-obsessed part of your mind is doing the choosing for you. And unless you shine a harsh light on this instinct, it keeps whispering in your ear, guiding you toward the powerful, away from the vulnerable, reinforcing systems of inequality you claim to oppose. So the next time you find yourself awed by someone's presence, ask why. Is it truly their character, their mind, their soul, or is it simply the glitter of status triggering primitive instincts? And when you find yourself dismissing someone else, ignoring their ideas, glossing over their humanity, pause and examine. Are you certain it's about them, or is it about you? And the ancient biases still haunting your brain? Because once you start to see how easily wealth and power distort your perceptions, you begin to question every ranking your mind silently makes. And that's the first fragile step towards seeing people not as hierarchies to climb, but as complex, invaluable beings, each deserving your full, uncalculated attention. And yet your mind's far from done with its shortcuts. In fact, it gets even lazier, reducing these layered, intricate humans into simple labels like hero, villain, winner, loser. But we'll peel that disturbing layer back in just a moment. Picture yourself at a crowded party. Music vibrates through the walls, laughter weaves like smoke around the room, and everywhere you look, there are faces, so many faces. Each one carries a rich inner life, a messy web of memories, fears, desires, regrets. Yet your brain doesn't see any of that. It trims them down instantly into neat, shallow labels: the funny one, the bore, the flirt, the snob, tiny boxes. Simplified stories, because your mind craves shortcuts. You think this happens because you're lazy or judgmental. It's deeper than that. It's biological. Your brain is a machine designed to conserve energy, processing the full complexity of another human being, the contradictions, the secret shames, the tangled motivations would be exhausting. So it does what evolution shaped it to do. It sketches quick portraits. It reduces depth to role, complexity to cartoon. It gives you just enough of a story to navigate social terrain without getting lost in endless nuance. Consider how you react when someone wrongs you. If a colleague undermines you, they're labeled manipulative. If a stranger cuts you off in traffic, they're a reckless jerk. Their entire identity, at least for that moment, collapses into a single trait that fits your emotional narrative. You almost never pause to imagine the fight they had that morning, the grief gripping their heart, the crushing anxiety behind their eyes. You don't see it because it's simpler not to, simpler to reduce. This isn't just a bad habit, it's a survival strategy. Thousands of years ago, on the savannas of early human existence, seeing someone as simply friend or foe meant living or dying. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of pondering psychological complexities when a stranger approached camp with a spear. Quick judgment was life insurance. But in our modern world, that same primitive impulse backfires spectacularly. Because now, most of the people you meet aren't threats. They're just complicated. Like you. And your brain's relentless urge to simplify leads you to misunderstand them, mistrust them, sometimes even dehumanize them. That's why gossip is so delicious. It feeds your brain a neat narrative. He's the cheater, she's the victim. And your mind sighs with relief. Complexity avoided. It doesn't stop there. This reduction shapes how groups are perceived. Entire communities get boiled down to stereotypes. Cultures become caricatures. Political opponents turn into sinister villains in your head, stripped of nuance so you can maintain your moral high ground without cognitive discomfort. You protect your worldview by flattening theirs. Even your closest relationships aren't immune. The people you love most still get assigned roles that limit them. The strong one, the fragile one, the funny one. It saves mental effort to file them under single attributes rather than constantly revising your picture to fit their evolving, often contradictory humanity. But this means you sometimes miss when they need help, when they're hurting in ways that don't fit the role you gave them. And here's the uncomfortable twist. You do it to yourself too. You pigeonhole your own identity, repeat stale narratives. I'm the reliable one. I'm the screw-up. I'm unlovable. I'm destined for more. Simplified scripts that help you navigate daily life without spiraling into existential uncertainty. You cling to these roles even when they hurt, because dropping them means confronting a far scarier truth: that you, like everyone else, are vast and shifting, full of contradictions that can't be pinned down so easily. So next time you catch yourself flattening someone into a single role, pause. To remember that beneath that surface is a chaotic orchestra of thoughts, memories, doubts, and dreams, every bit as intricate as your own. That stranger is a universe, just like you. You're looking at the shallow surface of deep water and mistaking it for the whole sea. Because if your primal brain's instinct to simplify is left unchecked, it will keep fooling you, keep cheating you out of richer connections, keep reducing vibrant people to black and white sketches. And in doing so, it will quietly sabotage your ability to truly understand or be understood. Which leads us straight into something even more troubling, how this same primitive wiring misfires alarms over harmless stress, leaving you tense and bracing for disasters that aren't even there. Why does your chest tighten when your phone buzzes with a trivial notification? Why does your heart race over an awkward email or your breath quicken because of a delayed reply? Your brain is wired to fire off alarms, flooding your system with stress chemicals, even for things that pose no real threat. It's like living in a house with smoke detectors, so sensitive that boiling water triggers a full-blown siren. And the worst part? You start believing every beep is a 5-alarm fire. This is the legacy of a brain built for survival in a world that no longer exists. Your ancestors needed hair trigger alerts. A crack in the bushes could mean a predator. A shift in the wind might signal danger. Stress responses were immediate, intense, and most importantly, life-saving. But today, that same ancient machinery reacts with the same ferocity to an unexpected bill, a vague text message, or a harmless social blunder. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference between a rustle that might be a tiger and an Instagram post that makes you feel excluded. It fires the same primal signal. Panic, cortisol, floods your bloodstream. Your heart races, your muscles tense. You're ready to run, to fight, to save your life, when in reality you're just sitting in your car reading an email. This mismatch between stimulus and response is more than inconvenient. It's a recipe for chronic anxiety, health problems, and a mind that's constantly bracing for impact. Think about how many harmless things your brain treats as threats. A critical comment from a stranger online, a boss's slightly furrowed brow, even silence, a lack of feedback, can ignite spirals of catastrophic thinking. Your mind creates elaborate worst-case scenarios, convinced disaster is moments away. And why wouldn't it? It evolved to err on the side of caution. False alarms were cheap. Miss one real threat, though, and you were dinner. So your brain learned to sound the alarm first, analyze later. Modern life amplifies this flaw beautifully. The endless ping of notifications, the relentless scroll of curated lives on social media, the unending comparisons, each tiny hit of uncertainty is enough to trigger a stress cascade. And because these are social threats, your brain often reacts as if your very belonging, your survival in the tribe, is on the line. Being rejected or humiliated feels like a death sentence, because once it was, isolation meant exposure, and exposure meant the end. So your mind leaps to protect you. It overinterprets, overreacts, and prepares for conflicts that will never happen. Meanwhile, your body bears the cost: tense shoulders, grinding teeth, restless sleep. You become a soldier permanently stationed in a war zone that only exists in your head. But it gets trickier. Over time, your brain becomes even more sensitive. The more it sounds false alarms, the better it gets at doing just that. Neural pathways strengthen. The smoke detector gets set even lower. Soon, it's not just big worries, it's everything. A delay in response, an offhand remark. Even your own thoughts become triggers, looping back to create fresh waves of panic. Recognizing this doesn't magically switch off the alarms, but it can help you step back, just enough to see the illusion for what it is, a survival system hopelessly out of sync with the world you actually live in. When your heart pounds over a missed call, you can remind yourself there is no tiger, there is no tribe gathering to cast you out. It's just your ancient wiring doing what it was built to do, overzealously keeping you alive. Still, awareness is only part of the antidote. The next step is teaching your nervous system new rules. Slow breaths, grounding your body, questioning those spiraling thoughts, each is a tiny rebellion against a primal brain that screams fire at the scent of toast. Over time, you can raise the threshold, recalibrate the alarms, and teach your mind that not every uncertainty is a cliff's edge. But here's the unsettling truth. While your brain is exceptional at panicking over immediate, mostly harmless threats, it's catastrophically bad at recognizing dangers that unfold slowly, quietly, until it's far too late. And that's where things get truly perilous. Picture yourself sitting by a slowly dripping faucet. Each drop falls with such tiny, imperceptible force that it seems harmless, even trivial. One drop, then another and another. Hours pass, days slip by, months disappear into years. And one day, you wake to find the sink overflowed, the floor rotted through, the foundation of your entire house weakened by water you barely noticed. That's exactly how your brain treats slow burn risks, by ignoring them until it's far too late. Your mind is a machine built for immediacy. It evolved to spot the rustle in the bushes, the shadow by the campfire, the sudden roar that might spell death. Quick threats, immediate dangers, anything creeping in at a snail's pace. Anything that quietly accumulates without setting off alarms flies under your mental radar almost completely. This quirk kept your ancestors alive in a savage world where the lion you failed to notice today could eat you tonight. But in a modern world full of problems that gather weight over months or decades, this ancient wiring betrays you. Consider your health. The candy, the cigarettes, the long hours hunched over a screen. They don't hurt today. They barely whisper tomorrow. Your brain doesn't flare with panic, doesn't flood your veins with adrenaline to make you run. Instead, it nods, shrugs, convinces you to keep indulging. It's only when the doctor utters words like chronic or irreversible that reality finally punctures your haze. By then, the damage is done. The slow drip turned into a flood you were never wired to see coming. This same flaw shapes your finances. A few small charges on your credit card, a tiny splurge here, a minor indulgence there. Nothing that feels catastrophic. Until one day you stare at the balance, tens of thousands deep, and wonder how on earth you let it happen. Your brain loves the small dopamine spikes of spending. It doesn't trigger that primal danger siren because the real threat was never immediate. It was patient, quiet, almost polite. Think even bigger. Climate change is the ultimate slow burn catastrophe. Temperatures inch up. Storms grow subtly fiercer, coastlines retreat, grain by grain. But there's no monstrous claw slashing the sky, no instant apocalypse your mind was designed to dread. So you keep driving, consuming, wasting, even as the slow drip becomes a torrent that future generations will drown in. You do this not because you're evil, but because your primal wiring simply fails to grasp threats that unfold over decades. This is how your brain screws you over in the modern world. It gifts you tunnel vision for what's immediate and blinds you to the creeping dangers that genuinely define your future. The parasites exploiting this flaw know exactly how to work it. Corporations sell convenience now while deferring costs to later. Politicians promise tax cuts today, ignoring crumbling infrastructure tomorrow. Even your own impulses are traitors, craving sweets, comfort, quick hits of validation at the expense of long-term meaning. You might think awareness alone solves this, that just by knowing your brain is blind to slow risks, you'll outsmart it. But the truth is darker. Even armed with this knowledge, you still gravitate toward the immediate. It takes relentless effort, lists, reminders, habits carved through discomfort, to overcome wiring that's millions of years old. And most people never muster that fight. They'd rather coast, trusting instincts that betray them, than live in a constant state of deliberate vigilance. So you build a life on quiet rot, letting slow poisons seep into your health, your wallet, your relationships, your planet. By the time panic finally sets in, it's usually because the slow drip has already carved a canyon too wide to cross. And you're left there on the edge, wishing desperately you'd felt more fear, more urgency when the first drop fell. But this is only part of how your primal brain sabotages you. Because just as it ignores threats that build over years, it perversely delights in harming others today, if it means a quick surge of reward. And that's exactly where we're headed next, into the twisted pleasure centers of your mind that light up when you hurt your competitors. Picture this. You're at a company gathering. Everyone's smiling, shaking hands, trading polite banter over catered food. But something darker ripples just beneath the surface. Watch closely. Notice how your eyes flick to the rival across the room, the one who snagged that promotion you were quietly hoping for. A tiny, almost electric surge of satisfaction runs through you when you hear they've stumbled on a project. Why does that feel good? Why does your brain, that 3-pound bundle of nerves and chemicals, give you a reward for their misfortune? Because your brain isn't built for boardrooms and balanced scorecards. It's built for brutal survival, for tribal victories that decided who got to eat and who starved. When your ancestors saw a rival trip, fail or lose status, their brains lit up with a subtle chemical celebration. Dopamine, relief, even joy. It meant more resources, more mates, more safety for them and their kin. Your brain still runs that same primitive software, rewarding you for the smallest win over someone else, no matter how civilized your world appears. But it's not just satisfaction. It's also a twisted sense of justice. You tell yourself they deserved it, that they were arrogant, that their failure balances the scales. Yet often, it's just your mind's instinct to elevate your own standing by pushing others down. The pleasure isn't noble. It's primal. It's the same dark mechanism that fuels gossip, schadenfreude, and the viral thrill of a celebrity scandal. Your brain loves these little spikes of superiority, rewarding you every time you confirm your tribe, your team, your circle is a notch above someone else's. Now consider sports. Entire economies are built on this neurological quirk. You cheer when your team scores not just out of loyalty, but because your brain treats it like your personal victory. When the rival team fails, you celebrate as though you just conquered new territory. It's so instinctive that even people who despise conflict find themselves sucked into this theater of tribal conquest. Advertisers, politicians, and corporations know it. They capitalize on it, keeping you hooked on narratives of us versus them, feeding your brain the emotional crack it's been wired to crave for tens of thousands of years. Look deeper, though. This instinct to delight in others' setbacks is why smear campaigns work, why rumors thrive, why character assassination often seems more potent than honest debate. Your brain rewards you not for fairness, but for winning, even if that means distorting facts or ignoring nuance. It hands out chemical treats for seeing competitors slip, reinforcing a cycle where undermining others feels as good, sometimes better, than building yourself up. This is the shadow side of your social mind, the same circuits that made our ancestors band together and protect one another, also engineered cruelty, exclusion, and the joy of an enemy's fall. It's why office politics can feel like silent warfare, why friendships crack under jealousy, why you might scroll through social media, feeling a secret thrill when someone who seems perfect posts about a rough day. Your mind whispers, see, they're not so high above you after all. And then it rewards you. Dopamine, a tiny shot of emotional sugar. But here's the uncomfortable part. These brain rewards don't push you toward growth, mastery, or real confidence. They just keep you locked in petty games of comparison. They make sure you chase hollow victories, feeling good not because you've improved, but because someone else has slipped. Over time, that cheap pleasure becomes addictive. It's easier to root against others than to build something meaningful yourself. And your brain doesn't care. It registers all of it, malicious or noble, as a win. So the next time you catch that spark of delight at someone else's misfortune, notice it. Ask yourself if it's truly serving you, or if it's just an old feral reflex, a leftover from a mind that once survived by celebrating every rival's fall. And speaking of your mind's dark reflexes, have you ever noticed how quickly it paints the world in stark blacks and whites, smothering nuance just to make everything easier to judge? Picture your mind as a vast theater, dimly lit, with a single spotlight that can only shine in one place at a time. Your brain craves simplicity because simplicity feels safe. It wants quick answers, neat categories, clear villains, and obvious heroes. This is black and white thinking, and it's how your primal mind tries to make sense of a complicated world. But here's where it betrays you. Because nuance, the messy, uncomfortable grey areas, is where truth usually hides. And your brain, it has a bad habit of drowning nuance just to protect your fragile sense of certainty. Consider how quickly you judge people. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly they're reckless, selfish, maybe even evil. You ignore the possibility that they're racing to a hospital or consumed by some personal disaster. Your brain doesn't want complexity. It wants moral clarity. So it paints them in stark, unforgiving colors. Or think about politics. It's easier to label one side righteous and the other monstrous than to grapple with the ugly fact that both sides are tangled with corruption, fear, and flawed human beings. Complexity demands work. It demands emotional energy. Your brain is stingy to spend. So it reduces the intricate orchestra of human motives into a clumsy drumbeat of good versus bad. This black and white lens isn't just lazy, it's dangerous. It divides the world into camps, tribes, enemies. Once someone is bad, empathy shuts down. Their suffering doesn't matter. Their humanity evaporates. This is how people justify cruelty, war, even genocide. A black and white brain will sleep soundly while committing horrors, convinced it's on the right side. Now look closer to home. What about how you judge yourself? When you fail, your mind might whisper that you're worthless. When you succeed, perhaps you swing to the other extreme, feeling invincible. There's no room for the far more honest story that you're a complex being, capable of brilliance and stupidity, compassion and selfishness, all tangled together in a shifting balance. Your primal wiring evolved for survival in a hostile wilderness. It needed fast judgments, friend or foe, safe or deadly. Hesitate too long, and you became dinner. But in the modern world, this quick binary judgment doesn't protect you. It blinds you. It turns subtlety into threat, difference into danger, disagreement into war. Even your memories get flattened. You look back at an old relationship and decide it was all bad or all good, because that's cleaner, simpler, less painful than holding conflicting feelings at once. You rewrite your own history to fit tidy narratives, even if they're lies, because ambiguity unsettles you. And here's the sinister twist: the more black and white you're thinking, the more easily you're manipulated. Propagandists, advertisers, demagogues, they thrive on your craving for certainty. They feed you narratives stripped of complexity. They give you enemies to hate, slogans to chant, stories that feel complete. And you swallow it because your brain feels safer that way. But safety is not truth, and certainty is not wisdom. The real world is maddeningly ambiguous. People are contradictory. Motives are mixed. Morality is slippery. When you start to see in shades of grey, you may lose the comforting simplicity of judgment, but you gain something far more valuable: the ability to understand, to adapt, to truly connect. So next time your mind leaps to label someone entirely good or entirely evil, pause. Ask yourself what piece of the puzzle you might be missing. What nuance your brain is trying to drown to keep you comfortable. Because the only real danger isn't in complexity, it's in ignoring it. But what happens when your brain doesn't just crave black and white stories, but actively falls for lies that flatter your ego? Let's wander into that uncomfortable territory next. Have you ever noticed how effortlessly your brain falls in love with stories that make you look good? Compliments slip past your defenses like a thief with a master key, bypassing skepticism, logic, and even past evidence to the contrary. It's almost embarrassing how predictable it is. Tell someone they're special, insightful, morally superior, and watch how quickly they start nodding along, even if it flies in the face of reality. Your brain is wired to protect your ego at all costs. It's like a personal PR team, tirelessly spinning narratives that shield you from painful truths. You might think you're rational, objective, grounded, but the truth: your mind is a hall of mirrors, carefully arranged to show you only the most flattering angles. This isn't just vanity, it's survival. Because believing in your own value, your own specialness, gives you the psychological stamina to get out of bed every morning, to face a world that doesn't care nearly as much as you'd like to think it does. Consider how quickly you latch onto lies that cast you as the hero. When something goes wrong at work, you're quick to blame incompetent colleagues, clueless bosses, or bad luck. Rarely do you examine how your own mistakes may have played a role. Why would you? That would chip away at the carefully constructed sculpture of who you believe yourself to be: capable, blameless, important. This is why flattery is such a devastating weapon. Manipulators, from toxic partners to unscrupulous salespeople to politicians with sinister agendas, understand exactly how to exploit this vulnerability. They don't even have to be subtle. A few well-placed words about your intelligence, your compassion, your refined taste, and suddenly your guard drops. You become pliable, agreeable, eager to live up to the glowing descriptions someone else has painted for you. And it's not just the overt lies you swallow, it's the silent assumptions you accept without question. That your moral code is more robust than others, that your empathy is deeper, that you see through deception better than most. These beliefs sit at the core of your identity, rarely scrutinized, because to challenge them feels like soaring through the branch you're perched on. Your brain even rewrites memories to flatter your ego. Research shows that people unconsciously distort their recollections of past events, exaggerating their own role in successes and downplaying their part in failures. That argument you won wasn't because the other person made a fair concession. It's because you were so brilliantly persuasive. That relationship that ended. It wasn't your emotional unavailability. It was their unrealistic expectations. The narrative must always return to you as the protagonist in a story where your virtues stand out in sharp relief. Now pause and think about what this means. If your mind so eagerly accepts lies that bolster your ego, how often are you operating under comforting illusions rather than uncomfortable truths? How many of your convictions about your goodness, your insight, your fairness are nothing more than carefully curated myths? And how does this self-flattery keep you from growing, from confronting the hard, abrasive facts that might actually lead to real change? This is why the lies that feed your ego are so dangerous. They prevent honest self-reflection. They keep you stagnant. They make you easier to control. Because someone who needs to believe they're always right, always noble, is someone who will go to extraordinary lengths to preserve that image, even if it means ignoring glaring truths, rationalizing harmful behavior, or aligning with people and ideas that simply tell them what they want to hear. The hardest truths to face are the ones about yourself. That maybe you're not as empathetic as you claim. That perhaps your intelligence isn't as towering as you'd like to believe. That your sense of fairness might crack under pressure if your own comfort or pride were truly on the line. These realizations sting, but they're also liberating, because only when you start dismantling the flattering lies can you begin building something real, an identity not based on fragile illusions, but on a clear-eyed understanding of who you actually are. So the next time you find yourself basking in a compliment or eagerly adopting a belief that paints you in the best possible light, pause, ask yourself, does this make me feel good because it's true or simply because it flatters me? Because your brain is always hungry for lies that feed your ego, but your soul, if you're honest, craves something far rarer, the uncomfortable, unvarnished truth.